we are live. It's the anniversary of D-Day, 12/7/2023. This is the Ips Morning Deprogram. If you were live last night with us, those archives will be going out this morning. And right now I want to just go through a number of the things that we kind of glossed over last night, catch up on a few things, and a few other things that came out as well. Let's go into... Now this is old news, kind of old news, but sometimes it's important to go back and reiterate things. And someone had proffered a challenge suggesting that there's no way they could close a movie set the size of 9/11 and the Twin Towers. But what I have here is an interesting clip where there's an eyewitness who is emphatically stating that there was no plane, that it was just an explosion.
Hey, this is the last hoodie.
And there are many, many videos like this that have surfaced, and anybody who thinks the official version is the real one just didn't do their research. Just like with the people who still believe the official version of the moon landings, for example. The difference between the people who buy the official version and those that don't is simply research. Okay, so what you're looking at here is the morning of September 11, 2001, and two people are talking as the second tower gets hit, or rather blows up. No plane. Okay, now if you listen to the conversation.
Oh my god. Oh my god. Holy shit, I just got that.
Such a dramatic spectacle. But no space lasers, I'll say that. No direct energy weapons. But now as these two converse, you'll hear that he testifies that there was no plane coming in.
Is it a plane or a bomb?
Was it a plane or a bomb? And he says, bomb.
It was a plane.
They say it was a plane, and that building just randomly fucking exploded. It was not a plane.
It just randomly exploded, not a plane. Not a plane, not a plane. Just bringing this up because it's not ancient history, but it is a foundational myth. The reason for these big mega psyops is to set the stage for the next act. And most people bought it. A lot of us saw the scripting behind it and deprogrammed ourselves. Champagne Joshy on X just posted this. This guy snuck into the Bohemian Grove. Put it on YouTube. He went up to the 40-foot owl, the Moloch owl, and check this out. This is even closer than Alex Jones got. He gets to the base of the statue where they burn their human effigy, and you get a pretty good shot of the artwork here.
Yeah. This is the owl statue.
Okay, here's the altar. You see there's an owl right there. And here's the altar where they burn Care. I think his name is Dull Care. And it's like burning Dull Care. Which is not all that dissimilar from a ritual they do here in Santa Fe, New Mexico, where they burn Old Man Gloom. And you put your glooms, which is what they call them, on a piece of paper. Like, I'm sick of my job, I'm sick of my spouse. And you put them in these boxes around town, they collect them, and they put them at the base of the Burning Man there, which they call Old Man Gloom, and they burn it. It's not that dissimilar. Bohemian Grove, it's they're getting rid of their cares. They're taking a break. Because everybody needs a break from their hard work, and they have to go run out in the woods once a year with all their friends, naked, and praying to big giant statues of ancient gods. That's normal, right? And one other point, Bohemian Grove, cremation of care, it's a burning man. They burn a man. How is that different from what you see in Vegas? Same ritual, same club, but this is like the right-wing naked Republicans, and then if you want to see naked Democrats and liberals, you go over to the Burning Man, I think in Vegas. Black Rock City.
What the fuck? No way. This is fucking cool.
It's hollow. He just knocked on it. It's hollow. What's inside of it? Now, the Moloch in the Bible is not an owl; it's a bull, but the belly is hollow for cooking the children. I bet the thing is full of bones and ashes.
Oh, that's hollow. They need to fill this pond up.
This is some Blair Witch style coverage here. Anyway, this is someone who just sneaked into the Bohemian Grove, went through a few other rooms. I wonder if he found the necrophilia room. There's so many terrible rumors about what goes on in this place. There's a full video of it as well. Very interesting. Hello, my name is says, I'm not quite sure. They have extremely expensive state-of-the-art motion sensors 24/7. Yeah, it is a little sus. Like, was he let in? Kind of like Alex Jones. Was he let in? I think Alex Jones was invited to the Bohemian Grove, but they said, look, you got to pretend to be against us, so you got to sneak in. But you're going to have all the same experiences we do. All right, we are joined by P Trippa 103, Peter W, Symbia, Ms. L. Thank you for joining. We are going over some of the things from last night that we may have glossed over. Here's a good one. There was a debate, another one of these terrible Republican debates, and Nick Haley said something kind of interesting. She said for every 30 minutes that somebody watches TikTok, they become 17% more anti-Semitic.
TikTok.
Now this is one of her talking points, and I'm like, wow, every 30 minutes.
We really do need to ban TikTok once and for all. And let me tell you why. For every 30 minutes that someone watches TikTok, every day, they become 17% more anti-Semitic, more pro-Hamas based on doing that. We now know that 50% of adults 18 to 25 think that Hamas was warranted in what they did with Israel. That's a problem. When campuses also don't go and protect when they have these rallies and you've got students that are scared, we need to go to these universities and say, if you're not...
Okay, so 17% more anti-Semitic for every 30 minutes of TikTok. That's like 6 or 7 videos, right? And if you watch an hour, are you then 34% anti-Semitic? You watch 2 hours worth? Yeah, I'm about 68% anti-Jew because I watched a couple hours of TikTok.
Once and for all. And let me tell you why. For every 30 minutes that someone watches TikTok, every day, they become 17% more anti-Semitic. More.
Fascinating how they've politicized the platforms as well. Like I'm hearing people like Jack Posobiec on the far right, major league satanic panic pusher, and he's suggesting that Reddit is an echo chamber creating left-wing trans ideology shooters. That's his main argument. I'm like, wow, that's kind of like what the left says about Discord, turning regular people into white bull cut MAGA shooters. So both sides are in total agreement that we've got to do something about this free speech that the other side exercises. So everybody agrees. We got to censor the left and the right. You see what they're doing? I found a press release that just came out today or yesterday on the 6th, and it has to do with that debate between Dean Odle and Pastor Greg Locke. And this is the one where Greg Locke is a globe earth preacher and Dean Odle is a flat earth preacher. And they had an argument over the Bible, and it ended with Dean Odle throwing the microphone at Greg Locke, which he deflected. But here's the press release. Flat Earth Debate official press statement by Locke Media. So this is coming from the Globe pastor. And again, I don't think it's a valid debate. I've been saying for some time it's not. And why would you debate somebody who believes in the globe? Because if they do, you can assume that they believe everything on the news. And this question isn't about shape. In fact, it's about how we come to know stuff. So really it's about agnosticism and burden of proof. It's a philosophical question. It has to do with our psychoepistemology. It has nothing to do with this one facet that they hyper-focus on, which is typical. The controlled opposition movements will have you running circles around a tree chasing a stinky red herring, so you miss the forest for your entire life. We see the forest. We spotted the forest years ago. The IPS is actually as we speak right now, clear cutting the forest of misinformation. Or as the Daily Beast, the Daily Beast, we love them. They spy on us. They ignore our leads. They don't care that we know who Q is. But anyway, they took the time to spy on us. And here's what they had to say. The Daily Beast on the IPS. This is shitposting to oblivion. This is the information equivalent of clear cutting a forest. I'm like, wow, you know what? It's exactly what we've been doing. The IPS is clear cutting a forest of misinformation instead of chasing trees. Meanwhile, the truthers are like, stop cutting down my tree. It's sacred to me. Stop cutting down my sacred psyop, false flag. No, I'm sorry, but we're uprooting all these misconceptions because they're wrong and it matters. Like the people who think that Israel did 9/11, well, guess what? They don't know the news is fake. They just think the news is lying. And there's a huge difference. And we get that difference here. Okay, moving on. We are going through the press release provided by Locke Media. This should be good. This is from Tennessee, Mount Juliet. The December 2nd Flat Earth debate between Pastor Dean Odell, Flat Earth, and the host, Pastor Locke, Spherical Earth, came to an abrupt end after 4 long hours when Locke decided that Odell and his followers, who were the large majority of attendees, had not come in good faith, but were only there to attack, intimidate, and provoke Locke and others who were there to debate peacefully about the Bible. So it was a peaceful debate. And peaceful in 1984, which is this year, basically means violent. So this was a peaceful debate with a microphone being tossed. Locke opened the evening in the spirit of unity and reconciliation and delivered clear instructions to the crowd to remain civil and loving. Odell wasted no time angrily threatening a walkout after Locke levied his first line of questioning. Now again, we're talking about a debate that just happened a week ago. It was excruciating. I watched a few parts of it, mainly the end when the fireworks really started popping off here. Odell repeated his threat every time Locke challenged him on a point of fact, but Locke continued to show restraint. Even while Odell delivered his opening presentation by stating the false premise that the Bible was not in any way a book of metaphors, but was to be taken literally at all times. Now, that's true. The flat earth Bible movement is Bible literalism. And to me, that is the same error philosophically as mainstream media literalism. Hey, I read it in the Bible, it's true. I saw it on TV, it's true. You see, there's an error in this. It's the argument from authority error. And the Bible religion is just the old school worldview shaper. The new religion is coming from scientism and the mass media. So I guess ironically, Pastor Greg Locke is embracing the New World Order progressive religion, the religion of scientism, which cancels out his religion. He's got his Bible with his angry flood god, which he doesn't really believe in because he's not a literalist, but Dean Odell does. But Greg Locke has replaced the literal flood god with Gaia, the globe, which is flooding us because the ocean levels are rising because you people won't recycle. It's always your fault. So anyway, it goes on. The Global Vision Bible Church security team, so they have a security at the church, presumably armed. Odell's Flat Earth supporters erupted with anger, and the security team did an admirable job keeping the peace. Several Odell supporters had to be restrained from rushing forward, yelling obscenities, while many more screamed at the Global Vision members in attendance. The visitors in the parking lot were raging and smoking marijuana. One enraged visitor rammed 3 cars as he sped away, further necessitating police involvement. So the debate where Dean Odell threw the mic against the Globe guy devolved into pot-smoking flat earthers crashing into cars and hurling insults. Sadly, despite 4 very difficult hours, the debate never happened. For this and the bad faith behavior of Odell and his flat earth supporters, Global Vision Bible Church. Global Vision Bible. Again, in my view, the globe is an idol to the earth god, Baal. which translates to Lord. I mean, maybe he's worshiping the right deity, just under a different name. It says we will not help them promote their deceptive pseudoscience and dangerous conspiracy theories as we consider them to be the doctrines of demons. So this Greg Locke thinks that the skepticism intrinsic to the flat earth question is actually some kind of demonic doctrine. Meanwhile, believing in scientism is just pure truth. You might as well just write it in the Bible. The earth is a spinning ball and global warming is happening. The truth is clear, the Bible never claims that the earth is flat. The Quran does. It says it's spread out like a rug, and I'm not sure if there are any spherical rugs. But I don't think the Bible has a place in the conversation about the shape of the world any more than it has a place in a conversation about global warming and climate change. Sure, you can find storm god references and floods, but again, the conversation about the shape of the world is outside the purview of religion and belief systems and prefabricated models. It's fake model versus fake model, incomplete model versus incomplete model, unverified versus unverified, subjective belief systems in a world of subjectivity and reality fluidity. The debate goes nowhere. And the people who hold fast to the establishment dominant paradigm are the most brainwashed people in the world, and their opinions are worthless. Sorry, Greg Locke doesn't perceive for himself. He has no business debating. He perceives through the screen. He's got the screen glued onto his face, like all MSM true believers. But I'm not saying that the Bible earthers are any truthier because they have adopted an alternative model that suffers from the same problem as the main model, which is lack of information, putting the cart before the horse. Yeah, ramming 3 cars. I want to see video. Cynthia says, but my Bible. Yeah, the but my argument, like, but my authority, but my dead kids. Like, I don't fall for that stuff. And this, it's always a plea. Please stop hurting my beliefs. They're sacred. No, I actually don't care about your beliefs. Okay, yesterday there was a mostly nothing burger shooting in Las Vegas, other than it's notable that it happened 6 years and 66 days after the 10/1/2017 Vegas Harvest Festival shooting. Speaking of flat earth, a Twitter person said, if you are a flat earth supporter, you are either a liar or a parrot. Which are you? Fascinating. I said, well, what if we just don't believe it's a ball and we have decided to withhold judgment? I'm not lying, I just don't believe. And then I further commented that it's funny how triggered non-skeptics are by skepticism. And that's really what we're dealing with. These are non-skeptics. So later on today, Alex Jones is going to be on Tucker Carlson, or they may already have recorded this, but it's going to be released today. Tucker Carlson wrote, Alex Jones predicted 9/11 in detail and on camera months before it happened. How did he do that? And why did the government decide to destroy him after he did? The full interview Thursday. Yeah, he got sued for $1 trillion over Sandy Hook, not 9/11. But he did, in fact, have the script July 25th.
To blow up airliners, Baltimore Sun, or if you let some terrorist group do it, like the World Trade Center, we know who to blame. And if there was an outside threat like a bin Laden, who was a known CIA asset in the 80s, he's the boogeyman they need. We know the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
He even called bin Laden, but he's not the only one. Donald Trump did as well. And if we could go back in time, let's say to the year 2000, I would be able to make the case that the towers are coming down based on what they're showing on TV, based on the predictive programming. That show, The Lone Gunman, came out a month before this, where the government is rigging an inside job to take down the towers with planes. Now, the thing is, this is obviously fake. Tucker Carlson, Alex Jones, because both of them are operating on the premise that planes took down the buildings. It's just a question of who did it and who lied. Tucker Carlson is also the one who promotes the idea that it was a peaceful protest on January 6th, but Ray Epps, a Fed, had to tell them to run in the Capitol. So it was an inside job. It was a false flag. As though MAGAs are a bunch of NPCs, robots. And if one bad actor goes in and says something, they all do it. I mean, it's a scapegoat story, but they're not going to get anywhere near the truth. They're not allowed to. It's not their job. Last night we talked about the inflatable surface-to-air missile launchers that are deployed right now. There's a lot of decoys have been deployed into the world. You got decoy, not only inflatables, but you got cardboard tanks. You have wooden ships, fake military bases. In 2020, we saw all kinds of empty tents. What are they doing? Well, they're simulating. They're creating the appearance of something. If you look on a newspaper and you see 50,000 enemy tanks, you're going to surrender. You're not going to want to have any sort of conflict, but they're inflatable. You just can't tell. That's kind of the idea. Well, if you never leave your house because you're locked down, and every hospital you pass by is surrounded by auxiliary tents, you just assume it's so full they need all these extra tents. But I have a little insight on this. In 2020, 2021, they had these trucks outside of the hospitals, which are basic reefer trucks, freezers, because they had not enough room inside, obviously. They had to put these bodies outside because they were so full because of the pandemic. And it was a great illusion. You would see these trucks outside thinking, wow, that hospital must be packed. The morgue must be packed. And they have these trucks outside just storing dead bodies. And you hear it all night if you're near the university. You hear the hum. And the newspaper comments on it, on the eerie hum of the refrigerator trucks, reminding us that people are dying in great numbers. But anyway, I went and worked for the county morgue for a little while, doing some body transporting the year before last. And when I first started going to that specific hospital, my coworker was explaining to me that from the time of the pandemic until about the time I started, they had just decided to do all of the body transports outside. So they wouldn't put them in the hospital morgue, they would put them outside, and then the morgue people from the OMI would come pick them up. So, in other words, the hospital wasn't full of bodies. They just decided to take care of the bodies outside. Why would they do that? So, if you drove by, you would always see bodies moving around. And these aren't bodies killed by the thing, these are just regular deaths, the standard number of deaths that come out of that hospital every day. But they dramatized it, made it all look like it was by the thing. I'm like, wow, that's theater. And nobody would know. Like, nobody would have guessed it unless they had that inside information. Okay, let's continue. We are going through a number of things that I earmarked for discussing. Last night we talked about the first real Hollywood sex scandal. Anyone care to guess the name of the offender, Fatty Arbuckle, when he raped Virginia Rape? Her name is Rappe. How old was Fatty Arbuckle during Hollywood's first major scandal? If you guessed, yep, 33. Which leads me to think that we're looking at scripting fake scandals, just part of the industry. I tweeted here, I wear a mask everywhere I go to protect myself from chemtrails. Chemtrails are coming back huge. They really are. Like, and if you're a chemtrail believer and you're not wearing a mask, I kind of question your belief. I question your commitment to the cause. Kind of like environmentalists who live like a bunch of consumers. Like, if you're an environmentalist and you drive and you have an iPhone, you can't justify your existence. No matter how many priceless works of art you destroy, no matter how many roads you sit down on in order to block traffic, you're a hypocrite if you're even just carrying an iPhone. The carbon footprint on something like that is immense. But if you're a chemtrail believer and you're not wearing a mask, or you don't have a bottle of vinegar at your side to spray at the sky, I really have to question, again, your commitment. And that goes back, by the way, about 10 years. The idea of vinegar curing chemtrails, that goes back to, I think it's Ron Paul supporters. Okay, here's the clip where Donald Trump predicts 9/11.
Feed dug up an old quote from Donald Trump talking about a large-scale terror attack 19 months before 9/11. In his 2000 book, The America We Deserve, Trump wrote, "I really am convinced we're in danger of the sort of terrorist attacks that will make the bombing of the 1993 Trade Center look like little kids playing with firecrackers." Trump also mentioned the mastermind of the attack, writing, quote, "One day, we're told that a shadowy figure with no fixed address named Osama bin Laden is public enemy number one, and U.S. jet fighters lay waste to his camp in Afghanistan. He escapes back under some rock, and a few news cycles later, it's on to a new enemy and a new crisis."
Seems to me somebody had the inside script. This is from January of 2000. He has the whole story.
Trump.
Wait.
Yeah.
Okay, hold on a second. Is this really Trump before 9/11? Have you read this?
It's 2000 in his book.
Are we making this? Somebody, did you make
Nick.
this up, Mika?
Nick,
I did.
Did you make this up?
Yeah,
Nick,
exactly.
tell us it's over, right? Because
Will
you're
you
wrong
stop?
about everything.
Mika, stop.
I don't
God.
think it's so.
They can't believe he was so prescient. But again, he wasn't prescient. He's an insider. Donald Trump is inextricably connected to the sinking of the Twin Towers, the falling of the towers. It ties into his world stage character. And he is a character. And not everyone has all of the story. Okay, let's continue. Don't care about Vivek. I've been following the tweets of Amazing Astronomy. And again, this is worth repeating. As Pope Elon said, it must be real if it looks so fake. This image objectively looks fake to anybody here who's still objective. Of course, subjectivist believers like Greg Locke would say that's real. Greg Locke would kneel before this. He would genuflect at the almighty Gaia globe idol. He defends this. He's an advocate for it. But my point of it is, this was posted by Amazing Astronomy, and they said, this looks so unrealistic. But this view of Earth and Moon is actually real, captured by NASA's Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter. It's actually real. There's your blue marble. We have an identity of the University of Nevada shooter. His name is Anthony Polito, 67. He had applied for a professional position at UNLV but was not hired. I don't know if he had a real body count or if he just took his own life. There wasn't a whole lot. The main notable thing was that it was 66 months, 6 years and 66 days after the previous Vegas calamity. But he didn't get very many. It doesn't look like he could move around very fast. Nothing setting off any real red flags. It almost seems believable and real if it weren't for the conspicuous timing of it. Fake until proven real. That's kind of the rule here. Truman B3000 says the PSYOP Entertainment Complex is probably working a fake event where 33-year-old Flurf actor attacks NASA workers. Well, I've been playing that clip where the conspiracy theorist who insists JFK is alive takes a hostage at a newsroom and demands that they release JFK. They have been preparing people for this. But now, if we look back at what Donald Trump said in 2000, January 2000, predicting what would happen 9 months later, this is what I mean by it's a predictive model. We can pretty much ascertain that we're about to get some kind of nuke. We're going to get Oppenheimered very soon. We're going to mostly see it on TV. There's going to be a blackout. There's going to be chaos. And then there's going to be fallout where our authorities tell us, don't go outside. Get your Taco Bell drone delivered because we're now in permanent lockdown. That's the next thing. And we were trained in 2020 to comply. We know how to do it. But you could argue against that. You could take a principled argument. You could say, the government can't tell me what to do when it comes to a mask. Or when it comes to the question of whether you're going to take their cure. But when it comes to fallout, there is no principled argument against wearing protective posture for nuclear weapon fallout. I mean, you could make an argument possibly about not wearing your seatbelt, but you couldn't argue it's intelligent. And the idea that you would not wear the safety measures or follow the safety measures and wear the protective posture that they recommend because of your politics wouldn't make sense. So in other words, the nuke threat would be like nuclear fallout would be an incredible unifier. The new TV series Fallout's about to come out, by the way, and it's all about Vault 33, interestingly. And speaking of 33, in the Oppenheimer movie, he's filling up a jar or a bowl, a glass bowl, with marbles to represent the components to the bomb as they acquire them. Anyone care to guess how many pounds of marbles Oppenheimer had in that glass bowl when it was time to detonate the bomb? Correct, 33 pounds of marbles. Mango Penguins says NASA relies on the space between your ears when it comes to accepting their truths. Oh, yes, I would argue that NASA is not about space travel. It's not about taking you to distant exoplanets in the future. It's not about becoming multiplanetary. It's about getting you to accept the premise that the sustainable way of life described as a Mars base or a lunar base, everything that goes into that, it has to be sustainable. It has to be bereft of capitalism and consumerism, but it's the ideal. If they can get you to accept the Mars basis as the ideal, which is really just space communism, and always has been, then they can make the argument that we should live that way here on Earth. So, in other words, they're selling us on space utopianism, and Earth is not going to be an exception. They're not going to say, continue to trash Earth and live unsustainably, and we'll do better elsewhere. They've made this case. I found some stuff back in 2017 where Bezos was talking about entering a civilization of stasis where everybody's locked down. They were talking about this in 2017. And they said if you want freedom, you got to go to space. But there's no more freedom left on Earth. We've been rate limited. My point being, NASA is there to sell you on a vision. It's the one world religion. It's their new heaven. And space is between your ears. It's about your mind. It's about worldview warfare, which is why you find evidence of the metascriptors involved in space and fake news on the ground. Stanley Kubrick, specifically, can be pointed at as having been a director and a scripter behind not just Apollo 11, but 9/11 and COVID-19, and George Floyd Derek Chauvin. You can find references in 2001 Space Odyssey to a fake pandemic or fake epidemic in the movie, and the guy named Floyd is there when they're talking about it, and he's sitting in this position where the corona was just displayed. It's intriguing when you go back and you look, but it's, again, Stanley Kubrick and many other directors have their fingerprints all over these major transformative psychological operations. James Cameron's fingerprints over 9/11 really have been standing out lately, but it's a big movement. I mean, it takes a global monolithic media apparatus to pull this stuff off, and it's not like it's an anomaly. These singular, spectacular events, even though they stand out as like the big ones, and all the truthers are waiting for the next big one. They're waiting for the nuke. They're waiting for the alien invasion. It's like every day is PSYOP maintenance. It's false worldview maintenance. PSYOP is the standard operating procedure. Every day it's a psychological operation. Not all of them involve fireworks. It's important to keep that in mind. So, for example, most truthers are only skeptical about these anomalies. Like, oh, I believe the news, but I'm skeptical about this shooting and that terror attack and this vaccine. But everything else I believe in. Like, that's the wrong approach. True skepticism isn't only being skeptical about the obvious red flags, but it's about skepticism as a permanent philosophical posture regarding everything that you obtain through the mediation, through the screen. Of course, the general public is trained to be screened. Their minds are screened, as in they accept the premise their face is actually glued to the screen and they view the world through the window of the TV screen, thinking it's a window. Just a clear, clean window. You can see things at a distance, find out what's going on. It's all there just for your edification. No, the thing was a filter the whole time. Fight the Flat Earth got into a little bit of a beef with Deep Inside the Rabbit Hole. There's a lot of Flat Earth beef going on these days. You've got, for example, Russian Vids put out a list of all the shills. We didn't make that list for some reason. Why didn't we make his list? Are we not shilly enough here. Anyway, Fight the Flat Earth said Dearth is proving, and Dearth is deep inside the rabbit hole, that he's a massive incel that no woman would touch with someone else's barge pole. Now, what is this? It's basically a response. David Weiss posted a picture of Fight the Flat Earth's wife, and he did so in a way that kind of was taken to be offensive. So here he says, Flat Earth and Globe Earth, it makes a difference. On the left, you have a flat earther who looks like a model, and on the right, you have an unflattering picture of the wife of Fight the Flat Earth. It's not even that bad of a picture. They selectively chose like a still shot where her eyes are squinted, but the idea here is that flat earthers are all beautiful models and this matters or something. But since he took a shot at Fight the Flat Earth's wife, McToon posted this to remind everyone this is the person that is comparing other people's looks. And this isn't as bad as it's been getting. It's been getting a lot worse. You got Caleb 5D, who's openly espousing anti-Semitism, proudly calls himself an anti-Semite, which anti-Semites never call themselves that. And he says he wants to round up the Jews. And he's getting violent, making threats. He's going to go fly out and beat up, Fight the Flat Earth. And then, weirdly, I've been following this drama as it unfolds. He put out another threat that he was going to defund Fight the Flat Earth, which he did. He apparently flagged all this guy's videos and had him pulled from YouTube. So it's getting pretty ugly. Let me go ahead and read you this. This is from KC Industry. Now, if you don't know who KC Industry is, he's the biggest TikTok flat earther. He's got the shaky videos where he's wagging his finger. He's got the bug eyes and the blonde bowl cut, and he's just reiterating some of the worst flat earth memes. So KC Industry says to Fight the Flat Earth, you shouldn't have come at me. See the results of your YouTube? I own you. I'll make sure you don't make money doing these things. So he admits here, Craig, remember when I told you I'd make you pay? Now you're paying. I'm not done with you. You pushed me too far. I will strike the fear of God in you for the rest of your life. I will make you pay for denying his existence and laughing at his creation. You'll pay more severely than you already are. I'm not done with you, I promise you, Craig. Don't start something you can't finish. I won't forgive you. Make an apology and say gravity is only a theory. And I will make sure the walls that you've built around you crumble. So anyway, Craig, Fight the Flat Earth, has to admit that gravity is only a theory, or KC Industry is going to continue to victimize him. Pretty epic, but it only lasted for a few hours. Fight the Flat Earth was actually pulled from YouTube, but it was quickly turned around when it was realized these were bad faiths. He says, I just want to let everybody know that the strikes were lifted and the channel has been returned to normal. I mean, if you're going to use the YouTube reporting system to falsely attack my channel, it might be a good idea to keep your mouth shut and not gloat about it in my DMs. Thank you. We appreciate the support here at IPS. Everything that goes into the think tank just funds our continued operations, and so I think say shout out to, I think it was Mike. I got that this morning over on Mark, excuse me, over on Cash App. It's all going into credits so we can send out live stream notifications along with everything else. Benton says, did you see the fight with Bro Sanchez and Jason Arkicks? No, if you want to send me a link, I'll check it out. I am trying to catch up on all the Flat Earth fights. I mean, it's like World War Flat Earth. None of them get along. Bible Earthers versus non-Bible Earthers. Then you have the Flat Earth grifting community, which is entirely different. A completely different agenda behind all of them. And very few of them are even taking any sort of interest in getting more information, going to an edge. Mango Penguins, awesome, that was you, appreciate it. Okay, we talked about the exploding house in DC. Maybe there's a connection here because this was, again, the same morning FBI Director Wray was testifying before Congress on the need to renew the FISA Terrorist Surveillance Act. Just a random explosion in DC. Kind of reminds me of that Nashville one we had a couple years ago, where the guy had a RV with a megaphone warning people to get away, and then it blew up. His name was A or Anthony Q Warner. So people took it to mean a Q Warner, as in some kind of a warning for the Qs. I mean, it's not a stretch, but I noticed that one, nobody died. There wasn't any. I mean, this isn't downtown Nashville near Christmas. I'm like, wow, they're really holding back. And I thought maybe it was because of us. Maybe they're holding back because the auto hoaxers are super critical and they are trying to dodge our bullets here. But now that they have the hyper realistic rubber dummy dolls, they have, I think they thought that they had us. Like, look, they can deny the death, but they can't deny this. But then, as you have been saying, we've had a number of instances where Al Jazeera posts a video of a man holding a doll, and they say it's a baby killed by a bomb. So you can drop a bomb on a baby and not leave a mark. Did you know that? You can drop a bomb and kill a baby, and there'll be no evidence. It'll just be dead, according to these videos. Well, then it's reported by the Jerusalem Post that it was a doll. They said, look, Al Jazeera is reporting a baby killed by a bomb, and it's obviously a doll. Then another day passes, and Jerusalem Post apologizes for calling the doll a doll, and they said, no, it's real. So I'm like, wait, it was just designated fake. Now it's designated real. Which is it? It's whatever they said last. Which is why yesterday I said, welcome to the desert of the designated real. Benton says the Jason versus Bro Sanchez is pretty good. I won't give spoilers. Cool. If you want to give me a link, I'll definitely take a look at it. I will watch it. The debates, again, I've been describing them as pointless and dumb because essentially they're premature. And what are they really debating? It's just subjective belief versus subjective belief. And I think we can do better than that. But that's one point they don't want to get into. You cannot get any professional anti-flat earth debater to talk about fake news because everything is real to them. Which means that they're not capable of having an intellectually honest debate. There is no intellectually honest debate about the shape of the world that does not include questioning the integrity of the mediation. There just isn't. They don't get an automatic argument from authority, like the TV is a Bible, and that we can prove it was written by a God, that it's infallible. Yeah, the mainstream media is the infallible word of God. And if it's reported there, it's true. That's their argument. The infallible word of the MSM, the infallible word of Big Brother. Here's a short quote from Paul Levy, Wetiko, Mind Virus. There is a contagious psychospiritual disease of the soul, a parasite of the mind, that is currently being acted out en masse on the world stage via a collective psychosis of titanic proportions. The mind virus, which Native Americans called Wetiko, covertly operates through the unconscious blind spots of the human psyche, rendering people oblivious to their own madness and compelling them to act against their own best interests. Yeah, I would call this the mass media and the mediated mind, which is the socially approved persona expression. You have to express yourself within their boundaries, but it's what reflects the interests and the desires of the mainstream media. Like the way that you express yourself is not necessarily that it's censored, but that you're meant to adhere to its established worldview. And what I'm suggesting that the establishment worldview they've given us is not only built upon an edifice of lies, but I think it's deliberately soulless. And it's designed to exclude souls, individual perception. It's designed to hive mind us. It is like a mind virus in that sense. And we here have been, of course, inoculated from mind viruses, but the general public, they have, again, no mental immune system. Mango Penguin says your mind is under the control of madmen. True. I mean, the structure of the lie world order is such that the knowers at the top have an advantage over everybody beneath them. And the people who serve them are also at various levels of being in the know, but they're still also deceived. So there's like perfect knowledge at the top and perfect ignorance at the bottom. And we are in the wilderness of darkness, as they call it, the hoodwinked. The wool has been pulled over our eyes. We were born that way. And you have to pretty much sign up for their cult, take the blood oath, and then they pull the wool off your eyes. They remove the hoodwink. But only when you're under their control. Only when you sign their NDAs in your blood. Then you get let in on the secrets. Then you get the light. But you can read it in their own rituals. The people outside the temple, the profane, are deliberately kept in the dark. And they don't let anybody in the light until they've taken the blood oath, until they've done the NDA. That's the whole purpose. This is why Freemasons get scapegoated. It's not like Freemasons rule the world, but it's the clearest example of the initiatory structure of a secret society infrastructure. It's big. There's a world-spanning secret society network, and it's manifested in different ways depending on the region, but it all has the same basic essential structure. You could also look at this as a security clearance society instead of secret society. Replace blood oath with NDA. What's the difference? But the liars are in control for a reason. We have a bifurcated reality. You have the objective one you experience through your senses, and then you have the internal representation that comes through the screen. And the more screen time you have, the more your internal representation will reflect the lie. And they know this. They tell you lies on purpose. And the lies are obvious to those with discernment. And that too is intentional. I think they do want the lied to either be oblivious or completely aware, which makes them angry, cognitively dissonant, and I think it's part of what maintains the mind control. Because cognitive dissonance, the disharmony of mind that comes from seeing the discrepancies, is unbearable for most people. So eventually, they lie along to get along, which is where they want you. You're not going to question or challenge anything. And most people don't have a position, a stable position from which to challenge anything. What is your argument for saying it's fake if everybody else's argument is from the screen? Which is how we're different. We're the ones who are saying that fundamentally the screen is a liar. It's not just lying on 9/11. It's not just lying on this or that shooting or terror attack. No, it is intrinsically a liar. And that's difficult for people to accept. It's like that movie They Live, where Roddy Piper has to physically beat his friend and force him to wear the glasses to see the lies. But he resisted it. A similar scene happens in Free Guy, which is sort of like a retake on They Live, where the NPC wakes up and realizes he's an NPC because he puts on these special glasses, and he can't get his friend, the security guard, to put on the glasses willingly. And in this case, it's not about putting on a special lens. I'm not telling you to believe something. It's the opposite. I'm saying take off the lens that you didn't know you were wearing. The presumption that the screen is a window to the world that you can look through 24/7 without comparing it, fact testing, reality testing its claims. Mango says the ego prevents most from waking up. Yeah, that's the main part of it is ego and, of course, emotionally held beliefs. And these beliefs are so, I think, difficult to uproot because of the fact that they've come in emotionally. It's not like you rationally thought about it, got all the facts, and I believe this atrocity happened. I believe 40 babies were decapitated because I saw the pictures and I'm horrified. Like, that would be horrifying. But no, it's all second hand. And you get this belief because you're emotionally pushed into it. You are caught up in the news cycle. Well, when somebody tells you it didn't happen, it triggers those same emotions that were used to tack down that belief in your psyche. And if you're emotional, it's because you're reactive. And if you're reactive, it's because you're triggerable. And if you're triggerable, it's because you have MK Ultra mind control up in your head and they're pushing your buttons. I am not triggerable whatsoever. In fact, I'm so prepared for the nuke. I'm already expecting that everybody's going to fall for it, just like 2020. So I'm already kind of preparing myself in advance for the disappointment at the lack of discernment that the massified mind tends to win. And I concluded this in 2020. I was like, the the power elite's main weapon is that they control all these puppets, and these puppets will dance to whatever tune that they're playing on demand. Mango says the mind has been trained thanks to television and your own parents distilling the same info. Yeah, I think their main weapon, and this is something I've been harping on lately, I think their main weapon is the news cycle and the pressure to believe as fast as the news is churned out. And I'm like, you know what? IPS is a fake news wood chipper. We take the fake news, throw it in the wood chipper, and parse through it. If you just believe it every day, it's like you're cramming for a test. You're memorizing. And there's a difference between learning and memorizing. And I would say this, that most people are memorizing their worldview. They're just downloading it directly and imprinting it on their minds. They're not actually learning it to be true or understanding it to be true in any real sense. It's very shallow. It's very shallow. All right, thank you for the link there. I'll be checking that out later. We'll be live tonight, and I will get into this debate between Bro Sanchez and the other one. We'll catch up on a few other things as well, as far as the flat earth thing. Fade Me Get Rich tweeted, fake dead kids' lives don't matter, which is a meme that started here. I like to see our memes spreading. And there's a few memes that I'd like to see spread in particular, like mind aids needs to go viral, among others. History doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. That's Mark Twain. It absolutely does rhyme, and it does repeat as well. And it's also scripted. History, his story, it's not a cliche. It's actually true. They say his story to say it's the patriarchy. Well, no, it's not that it's his story, the patriarchy. History is the story of the demiurge, I suppose. Who is he? Big Brother's story. Anyway, thanks for joining. I'm going back to the 24/7, and we'll be live tonight. Open phones. This is Infinite Gang.
It's a creeper beat, man. Come on.
Infinite plane, infinite plane, infinite plane, infinite plane. Doing my thing, do my thing, do my thing, do my thing. Infinite plane, yeah. I live on an infinite plane. I live on an infinite plane. They telling me different things. That's supposed to be pulling the strings, but I know they playing the games. Since I found out today, I live on an infinite plane. I ain't playing no games. I'm on a different plane. I live on an infinite plane. Yeah. I know the news is fake. They're trying to choose my fate. I know the views is fake. They pushing the global stage. Fake news on the radio wave. All the hoax, the whole world is a stage. Body double like I'm Saddam Hussein. Doing my thing. Don't want the fame, just trying to make change. They took down my page. But an infinite gang, infinite plane, playing no games. Infinite gang, we ain't playing no games.
Inks G says, Ollie Alexander, Nick Fuentes stuff is absolutely radioactive. Commenter says, the liars turn this world into hell. Yes, the lying and the gaslighting, but I'm also interested in calling out those who lack discernment. Like, sure, okay, I'm not going to play guilt by association. So you're in the clear. If you knew these people, you rubbed elbows with them, you hung out with them, fine, you're in the clear. But then you need to explain why you can't detect this type of behavior in your midst. You're basically suggesting that you don't recognize a wolf in sheep's clothing. And what kind of truther are you? I mean, the hypocrisy's off the charts, as it always is. And I followed up, I watched some videos with Nick Fuentes, and I see a lot of victim blaming. I see a lot of reframing and misdirection, but they're not going to escape the essential fact of it. Even if it's only a tenth as bad as they say, it's still revealing a whole lot of projection, because this is the party of purity that wants to purify this nation in every way, racially and otherwise. They're the ones protesting the left for their morality and accusing them of grooming. And then what do we find here?
And this goes all the way up from Ollie's ex-boyfriend or Karl Rove to, I think this, I'm not playing guilt by association, but I'm going to read a lot of tweets and a lot of people who've observed this group, this cult. It's a blackmail cult. And one other point here, it's even though they're calling the other side out and they're the ones being busted, it's obviously both sides. It's obviously both sides, always was. Restless Bear says, look, I'm dumb, but I knew Ollie guy was bad news on first sight, and I never met the guy. Yeah, I thought he's very strangely reminiscent of the Satanist Sammy Davis Jr., but, you know, I didn't have any reason to think he was anything other than somebody with very poor taste in friends. And, of course, someone who's managed to dodge a great deal of culpability in 1-6. And look, if he's that far in 1-6, he's an insider. In other words, this is another point. This entire blackmail circle includes people who would be in the know if January 6th was a psyop and not a false flag. Is anybody here still thinking January 6th was a false flag and not a scripted drama? And speaking of scripted dramas, I want to talk about a lot of these recent killings by the police that have been in the news. All scripted drama. We'll get into that next. Yeah, Lord Laney says they're ramping up the black versus white division in Missouri with the latest shooting in Kansas City. They're going after the Hart, Damar Hamlin, Ohio train crash style. Yeah, I specifically wanted to talk about that. Ralph Yarl, you rang the doorbell of someone he didn't know. Wrong address. Address was a 115. And this, I think he's 16-year-old, gets shot in the head. Now, a couple of things about the story I want to get into here. He rings a bell. And if you remember the other day, Joe Biden, CGI Joe, rang the peace bell in Phoenix. And just looking at the key words, Phoenix, peace bell, he rings a bell, he gets shot in the head. And this 13-year-old or the 16-year-old being shot on 4/13, it ties in symbolically. And this is also going to connect to the nightclub shooting at Mahogany. I think it's called this club where the Sweet 16 party took place. And I'm looking at that event, and I'm like, what is it with the number 16? Things are so scripted, and just so you know, like, we're not cherry picking. It's just right there. For example, Boston bombing just had its marathon. Anybody know the address of where the bombs went off? 666 Boylston Street. Yeah, 666 Boylston Street. Now, Angst G says maybe he got shot in the head 33 times. Yeah, it's a joke, but the fact is, Jayland Walker, who the officers that shot Jayland Walker are not going to be charged. So expect more riots. 8 officers shot him 46 times. Again, 46, 8 officers, 846, George Floyd. These events are all interconnected, and they even connect them in the numerology and the symbolism. And when the Jayland Walker thing happened, I saw Justice for Jay, and I thought, Jay Walker, watch this turn into another conversation about profiling or something. Because there were news reports that came out immediately after that blacks are subject to more stops because of jaywalking, where others are excused. And this is another area where you can point at the police and prejudice. And then Jayland Walker getting shot 46 times is obviously egregious. He had no criminal history. 8 cops, 46 times. And anyway, when I saw that, I'm like, okay, this is connected to George Floyd. Pretty obviously. Now, this one in Kansas City, though. Yeah, he rings a doorbell, gets shot in the head. That's insane. I don't think he's dead, though. Another point of it, too, the man who shot him, it's being framed as racist. Old white man claimed he was afraid because of the size of the teenager. And I'm thinking, okay, old white man, and I'm seeing it on CNN. Now, Drudge is reporting him at 85. But on CNN, where I'm watching and I'm monitoring what is being promulgated to the gullible, he's 84. And I'm looking at his face, and he's got the one eye kind of squinty. So the one eye thing, the head wound, 84, there's something coming out here. It's in Clayton County. There's a lot to unpack, but we'll get to all of it. And I'm noticing just the different ways these different martyrs are interconnected. And this is the fascinating thing to me, how The last big martyr was Tyree Nichols, and how his death was compared to Rodney King. And it's like, okay, you got Rodney King now in the picture with Terry Nichols, and then you get the usual suspects. Forrest Crump at all these events. He's the Forrest Gump of PSYOP lawyers. He's actually been at this other one as well, with this Ralph Yarl door shooting. But my point is, this Tyree Nichols brings in Martin Luther King's family, and it takes place at Mason Temple. They bring in all the different martyrs, and it's a cult. It's a movement. It's a martyr-based movement, though. It's really fascinating when you get into how connected they are. Like, there's another Twin Cities shooting that happened last year on 2/2/2022. And that was a month of palindromes. And just think mirror here. So on 2/2/2022, at 6:48 a.m., a kid named Amir Locke gets shot by the police, who shoot him in a case of mistaken identity during a no-knock warrant. Well, no knock, so there's your Locke with his name. His name is Amir. Well, it just so happens, and the timestamp on the video shows that he shot at 6:48. That's a mirror of 846. Another martyr with the 846 code in the Twin Cities on a numbered date that reinforces this twinning, this twin symbolism. Okay, the one who was shot did survive, but it's been all over the news, and they brought up the racist angle of it. And then they also have another story just as fake, where it's a white woman who pulls in the wrong driveway and she gets shot. So now these are being weighed, and they're saying, well, this one has a racial component, and this is just a symptom of our gun culture. And something else is the reason why the old man shot the young man through the door. It's like, okay, if he felt so threatened, why did he open the door? And what I think they're leading to is this, because I've been watching a lot of the feds and the agents, the shills, and one person I'm comfortable calling a shill is Stu Peters. And Stu Peters is one of those current thingers, always promulgating the narrative that's going to be used against truthers in general. And for weeks, he's been hyper-focusing on blacks attacking whites. That's his thing right now. And he doesn't even contextualize his videos. Not that, a random violent attack requires that much context. I mean, it's reprehensible. You have to shame that behavior. I'm not saying don't share this stuff. However, I knew there had to be some political agenda because many of these were years old. But if you were to fall into a Twitter thread, you might think, wow, there's a war going on. It's a race war right now. It creates an echo chamber, and it's being done deliberately. And I think the algorithms are doing this. Others have noticed it. But I think they're going to say that man was radicalized into fearing his neighbors by his Twitter feed, thanks to Elon Musk. Like, in some way, it's going to go back to Musk. Okay, we have the protests in Ohio, Jayland Walker, and then we have the child that was shot through the door, went to the wrong address. Okay, here's something. Now, we're talking about the martyr cult. Martin Luther King's 44th death anniversary was on 55th. So his 55th death anniversary, Martin Luther King, was on April 4th, the day that Trump was brought in. And we already talked about the Christification of Donald Trump. Just shameless, isn't it? The meta script is absolutely shameless here. But I was pointing out how the 55th anniversary happened to tie in with this storm narrative, the Q drop 55, and part of the sun falling off at the 55th latitude as the Tyree Nichols protesters shut down I-55. Now, what am I saying here? We're talking about the martyrs, Martin Luther King, Trump being Christified. We're talking about the sun being a symbol of the crown, the head, the king, and part of the head being blasted off. Like, that's what I'm pointing out here. I'm suggesting that this broader ritual being told throughout this month of April in so many different formats, that the headshot is very significant, especially because he rang the bell. And the bell has something to do with Baal. Bell, shaft of Baal, obelisk. It's their god. And so there's some kind of code in here. And the address was 115, which you could multiply it and get that 55. I didn't want to go too deep into it because I don't like to add and subtract and divide. However, these patterns are unmistakable. I mean, again, if you haven't looked into it, Phil Hartman was shot in the head, throat, and chest. Like, I just found that out. I knew he had 3 bullets at 3 a.m. I knew it basically fit the thing with SNL. You know, Chris Farley dies at 33, John Belushi 33. And I'm like, well, this guy didn't die at 33. But he certainly had that 3 a.m. thing and 3 bullets. Well, Hiram Abiff, the Masonic martyr, is hit in the head, throat, and chest, exactly like the wounds on Phil Hartman. And now I'm thinking the name Hartman must also mean something. All these names, world stage names. And do I think these people actually die? No. Chris Farley was obviously Rob Ford, mayor of Toronto. Obviously. Joined by Shannon Jones. Thank you for joining. Lord Laney says, like the Black Sun Soundgarden sang about. Yeah, the Black Hole Sun. There's something fascinating about that. Because I believe the singer... Let me bring this up. There's a place in Seattle called the EMP. And the Soundgarden singer, I believe that he's got a statue there. Christopher John Cornell died in May of 17. American singer-songwriter best known for Soundgarden and Audioslave. Okay, well, I believe that there's a statue of him there at the EMP. Which, well, the EMP in Seattle is they've renamed it, but it was their, like, it's a place where it was for museum and arts. And I thought, well, EMP sounds like electromagnetic pulse. Now it's called the Museum of Pop Culture. But it used to be called the Experience Music Project. And it's really close to the Space Needle. And a lot of the predictive programming about Seattle getting nuked happens to point at this area. And I remember looking at this Chris Cornell statue, the EMP location, and thinking about Black Hole Sun must have some kind of correlation here. We are joined by Restless Bear, Clockwork 113, JT. She says, Caveman Lawyer was kind of funny. Oh, yes. I mean, SNL, I think it used to be funny. These days it's just more predictive programming and reinforcing the dominant paradigm, telling you what it's safe to laugh at, what you can't laugh at. And most recently they did the opening with someone playing Donald Trump in front of Jesus. And it was clever, it was well written, it was funny, but it was blasphemous, and it was on Easter. And you could say, well, it's just a joke. Well, no, it is, but it's also building into this meta-narrative of Trump as a Christ, the Christification of Trump. And it just sounds ridiculous. I know this. But this is part of how they operate. Like, if you watch the Joker movie, remember at the end of the Joker movie, before he kicks off the riots against the police, this is like pre-2020 predictive programming for 2020, because they all put on the Joker mask. And the Joker mask, of course, became the medical mask in real life. But before his character, Joaquin Phoenix, rises from the dead like a phoenix, he's in the back of a cop car, and all these people are gathered around, they think he's dead. Then he wakes up and he gets on top of the car, and he doesn't just, he's really theatrical about it. He actually puts his fingers on his mouth where they're bleeding, and he draws himself a bloody smile. And then he puts his arms out, so he's like Jesus, and his palms are bloody. Like, this is Phoenix, Christ symbolism, which you'll see Joaquin Phoenix. There's a lot of symbolism in all of his movies where they use this, I call it archetype casting. They connect him with Jesus in all of his roles. Even the name is very emblematic of this. But I'm just saying, it's ridiculous that Trump would be compared to a Christ. But, outside of the courthouse where he was arraigned, they have the Joker movie where they had 700 actors in some kind of a riotous performance. In other words, they've already had some kind of symbolic riot in front of the place, and it's the Joker movie. And if you look at the latest Joker movie's poster, it looks like Trump's Truth Social avatar with red, white, and blue makeup. He's got the American flag on his face with one eye covered in blue, but it matches like a template the Joker. And the connection here is kind of interesting because the Joker character is this archetype. Does have a connection worth getting into if we get into the Batman and Joker symbolism that is really pretty prevalent in the last, since at least I would say Dark Knight Rises, specifically with the school shootings. You'll notice ever since the Joker shooter at the Aurora, or you just had Joker Sarnev from the Boston bombing having his death penalty reinstated, and then these movies themselves, Christopher Nolan movie, who has someone in his art department with the name Crowley, Nathan Crowley, related to Crowley, interestingly. But in his movies, you'll even find references, like in the Batman movie, a reference to Sandy Hook. Like, these are not coincidental. Yes, Salty Siren says stigmata, referencing Joaquin Phoenix. And look, that martyr that was shot in Atlanta, the environmentalist martyr, according to the according to the coroner's reports, he had bullets through his palms. Like, what kind of police are so bad in their aim that they shoot an activist through his palms, where then he can be, I mean, this is like what I call Christification. They do it all the time. They're shameless about it. But again, getting back to Kansas City, just the code here: old white man shoots a young black man or young black child, a teen, at 4:13, head wound after he rings the bell. For some reason, I think the bell is some kind of a clue here. And this being shot through the door theme has been reoccurring. In fact, locally, well, just a few miles up, one of the places where I would drive at my last job at Farmington, someone was opening his door with a gun in hand because the police had shown up, and apparently they showed up at the wrong house, and they shot him. Kind of like swatting, but it happened. I think it was real. Maybe not. But I'm noticing that the narrative that's being introduced into the CNN feed is basically guns are dangerous, guns are the devil. Because that Sweet 16 event, which we have talked about, the one in Dadeville, Alabama, happens on 4/16. Originally, they reported 4 dead, 16 injured. Like, they reiterated the 4/16 for some reason. The place is called Mahogany Masterpiece, MM33, but for the most part, the name it's called Dadeville. But I'm looking at the screen, and someone with a Dadeville shirt, it's half open, and I only see the middle 5 letters, and it says devil. And we don't know who did it. They don't know who shot up the place. What does that mean? They don't know who shot up a nightclub, a Sweet 16 party. Who shot them? And every time I look at the screen, I see the crime scene tape, but it's upside down. It says do not cross. So I'm just talking about the big picture, the gestalt, upside down cross, devil, and a whole bunch of references, a whole bunch of 16s. And I'm like, I don't know what this all means yet, but it almost feels like they're trying to say that the deaths that are occurring are actually from the devil. Like, it's literally that. They're kind of like, it's subconscious. But you have to remember too, that the programmers know how to communicate powerful messages through through your subconscious, through symbolism. And I keep seeing it, the devil. Lickety Split says, KC guy looks like Soros. If you talk about the 84-year-old who shot the kid in the head, okay, I looked at his face, and he has one eye enlarged, and his hair is very dark for an 84-year-old. It looks dyed, looks like an actor. And one of his eyes is kind of closed. So I don't know, he's quite a character. And they're already racializing it. This is how you know it's fake. Scooby-Doo justice. You know who did it and why within 30 minutes. The media is the judge, jury, executioner. This is a crime scene involving a minor. And yet, he's on the news. He's a martyr, celebrity. The president's talking about him within minutes. It's basically no different than Greta. This is a crisis actor-driven reality. Mazel said, why did I think it was a dance studio she rented out for parties? That's what it was. It was a dance studio. It was called Mahogany Masterpiece. It looked like a rinky-dink little place, and it doesn't look like anything actually happened there. And then the mourners are gathered around it. And I'm like, what are the mourners doing there? Wouldn't they be where their families are? Wouldn't they be at the graves? And they don't know who did it. Again, they don't know who did it. It's a whodunit, but they don't know who did it. Yet, every time I look at the screen, I see the devil. That is not a coincidence. And connecting this, again, at the same time, Jalen Walker, Akron, Ohio, 8 cops, 46 times. That's some very heavy meta script. And what's more, there was a protest after Jalen Walker was killed. And the protest had counter-protesters from the Patriot Front. And there was this picture that went everywhere, went viral. And I could find it in 5 seconds if I wanted to. But basically, right after Jalen Walker's initial protest, these Patriot Front individuals accosted a black protester. And the picture that you have Patriot Front with shields, and their faces covered. And they look like Roman soldiers. And then you have the protester whose arms are being held out, and he's held up like he's crucified. It's a black Christ. And so it's black Christ, and then you have the white power Nazi Patriot Front, founded by a guy named Thomas Rousseau, by the way. Rousseau, definitely, you get some French Revolution off with their head connections there. And it's all by design. But the fact is, they presented this black Christ image, very powerful, right there in Ohio. Connected again with a guy who was shot 46 times by 8 cops. 846, George Floyd, a ton of Christification of George Floyd as well. And I'm looking at this, and then I look at the rest of the news media, and I see that Kendrick Lamar puts out a video where he's a black Christ on the cover. And then he produces a song called Heart Part 5, for which he recently won that award, where he's Christ, and he's surrounded by these women in red, and then he's covered in blood. And this is used to advance the cause of women's rights. Again, a reference to the womb, the heart, the chalice. This is some heavy symbolism it tied into the Super Bowl, because this Kendrick Lamar Heart Part 5 award-winning performance is the inverse, or you could say it's the complement to the Super Bowl Mystery Babylon fertility rite. In other words, the goddess in red and the dancers in white in the Super Bowl, which is the chalice, the cup, the womb, the goddess. It's all just goddess symbolism there, but on his part, it's the other side. And the red and the white are pretty self-explanatory. My point being, this black Christ image has been projected very heavily in recent years. And I also want to point out, and I wrote about this in that book, The Metascript Decoded, a lot of this was pushed on Colin Kaepernick to coincide with his activism and his role as a, you could say, symbolic titular head of the BLM. Remember, he was the quarterback during the Blackout Bowl in 2013, Super Bowl 47, where it went dark for 33 minutes. Beyonce was there. Yeah, he was the quarterback during that. And that symbolizes something here, because here he is, quarterback, 33 minutes of darkness, obvious symbolism there, and then he leads the way with this kneeling, where symbolically he's in a stadium that's dark, because he's playing the role of the martyr, the sacrificial Christ. That's why the 33 is so prevalent here. And it was really during his 33rd year that a lot of this came to head. Like, they even auctioned off his, quote, bloody gloves. I mean, I don't think football players who are throwing balls like with their gloves on are getting bloodied. But for some reason, you can find this on they actually auctioned off Colin Kaepernick's gloves. And it's, of course, San Francisco 49ers bloody palms. And this is, again, the stigmata, the martyr thing. A reoccurring theme here, that he sacrificed his career. This was written into his Emmy Award-winning Nike campaign, where it's like, if you believe in something, sacrifice everything. And I'm like, what is all this? There's a lot of that. And that particular campaign, by the way, was an award-winning campaign. He got an award, and so did the designer named Kennedy. If we get into the Kaepernick character, I can find a lot of Kennedy, a lot of Lincoln, and a lot of Christification. And it goes deep, but what I'm saying here is that it's all about communicating this martyr cult's overall message. I thought for a time that maybe they would like symbolically take him out, like as in like JFK him, or maybe they've already accomplished that with George Floyd. But regardless, they've made him into a living embodiment of what you would of this victim of systemic oppression. Very interesting world stage character. We can delve into that later, but I'm pointing out that this Christification thing has been consistently used with all the BLM martyrs. Okay, let's continue. I have a ton of notes I haven't even really started to get into yet. We'll probably get into the... Oh yeah, here's something that's coming up. Musk delayed his SpaceX rocket launch, and I think it's on purpose because they wanted to do it on 420. We talked about this the other day. Well, 420, we have a hybrid eclipse, which is the rarest of all types. And now, anyway, it's Thursday, the 20th, 2023. Solar eclipse occurs when the moon passes between the Earth and the sun, totally or partly obscuring an image of the sun for a viewer on the Earth. If you want to believe that. My point is, it's a hybrid eclipse. Hybrid solar eclipse. Something to look forward to. And Musk will be launching that date. Now let's get into this. If anyone's looking, is anybody following this meltdown on the far right with America First? Because I've been talking about this thing being significant in that it represents a peek into the blackmail cult that runs this place. Well, it looks like there's some intrigue here. Like Nick Fuentes claims that Marjorie is using Milo to destroy Ali as a way of taking down Nick to take Ye out of the election. Like it's pretty much like a circular firing squad in a way. But the seriousness of the charges, though, take this out of because the consequences are much higher. And I'm seeing a lot of dirt being dropped on MTG by Ali. It's going back and forth, and it's I don't want to believe Milo. I don't want to take Milo as a source, but unfortunately, he does have a bit of credibility with some of these things, and it's getting to be kind of convoluted. Well, not kind of. So it starts off with, well, here's a tweet that kind of explains it, and this is by Mr. Newberger. So QAnon idiot Marjorie Taylor Greene now hates Nazi Nick Fuentes, who now hates pedo condoner Milo, who now hates pedo Ollie Alexander, who now hates white supremacist Marjorie Taylor Greene, who now hates bigot Laura Loomer. But all of them love Donald Trump. Yeah, that pretty much sums it up. And it's because it's a mutual blackmail club. They all have stuff on each other. They only pretend to like each other. That's what's coming out here. Lickety Split says, sounds like an MTV drama. Well, I think they're all reality TV stars. Now that I'm looking at it closely, I think that the political theater we see is quite literally reality TV. And these individuals are puppets. And they're puppets because people know stuff. And what is being dangled around right now is that Ali knows something about MTG. Here's what he put out there. And it's shameless that he's even showing his face, that he's even talking, that he's even communicating. In fact, they took down his Twitter account, even though he deleted 37,000 tweets. But he's thinking he can fight this back somehow. I mean, this is grandiose thinking at best. He should have turned himself in because he's a danger to society. Ollie Goering says, ew, fake people with fake problems. Well, the thing is, I don't think these problems are fake. Like, I do think these people might be real scum to be taking part in the PSYOP entertainment complex. Remember, it's not a movie. The QAnoners say, oh, it's just a movie. No, it's not a movie. It's a psy-war. It's psychological war. It's intrigue. And it's definitely populated with real bad actors. And I'm suggesting that this is possibly an off-the-script leak. I don't know. Like how much, like 1/6, for example, was obviously contrived. Was this contrived? Was it scheduled? Is there a scheduled takedown of the American right? Or is this some petty egos deciding, screw it, we're going to blow it up? I'm not sure. But listen to this. Marjorie Taylor Greene, quote, loved me in December 2022. I exposed the fact that she committed a crime. Now she's trying to intimidate me with smears and lies. So I do not expose her crime. But I have the receipts, and I will not be intimidated. And there's a picture of him with his arm over MTG's shoulder, smiling. Remember this night, he says. So what he's admitting to here is he has blackmail material. Now, I mean, to me, that's crazy. That's like, this is insane to me that you could openly admit, just flaunt the fact that you've got blackmail material on a representative. Doesn't matter if you like MTG or not. But this is suggesting that there's some kind of, again, mutual blackmail society here. But after he posted that, his Twitter account went down. Salty Siren says, I have a theory. DeSantis and all the other Republicans prefer their children intact while the Democrats do not. It's a fight over preferences. Oh, interesting. Kind of like vampires versus werewolves. And the humans are just stupidly voting. That's kind of the theme in that some show I saw on TV the other day, True Blood. I'm looking at the news. Man who shot teen who rang his doorbell surrenders on felony charges. Wrong address. Ralph Yarl, who's a twin, which is also interesting symbolism. And look, I don't assume these things are real just because it's on CNN. In fact, I assume the opposite based on the past. And I recognize a lot of people are just getting emotional. It's like, okay, you're allowing the emotional manipulator that controls the majority of the population to tell you what to think. And if this is a real event, it wouldn't be like this. It wouldn't be televised. We wouldn't have the inside scoop. It wouldn't be, like I say, Scooby-Doo justice. And think about all the real crimes they just don't care about. Lickety Split says, take down of both sides like the mosque and cathedral in France. Could be. I was watching this commercial a few hours ago. It was, this man takes his son to the front of a synagogue. And he says, I see what you've been posting online. And this is right after CNN has a story about Discord and how it's just a bunch of Nazis. And he's like, you really want to say this stuff? Go say it to their faces. And he invites his son to get out of the truck and go to the synagogue and tell the Jewish people what he's writing about them on Discord. And he didn't, and they hugged. And it said, quote, Hitler was right, has been posted over 70,000 times since last year. Just noticing anti-hate speech messaging being put on the news. Yeah, that's not bad. We shouldn't support that kind of bigotry. And the people who engage in it are obviously, kind of dull. But the fact is, this is being done just after an attack, I would say a politically motivated attack on Discord. Discord is just a server. But it's a server that happens to attract people smart enough to see through the MSMBS. That's pretty much the fact of it. Wrong address shooting. Ralph Ural, 16. Again, 16, Sweet 16, January 6, 1-6. We have the number 16, $1.6 billion is the subject of the lawsuit against Fox by Dominion over the January 6th thing. Fascinating, that number, when I look back, how much it actually is tied into this particular event. The takedown of Fox News. And this is also notable. Rupert Murdoch's empire falling after this drama of the individual named, Alex Murdoch? The dynasty of Alex Murdoch falls, and now you have Rupert Murdoch. Almost parallel narratives. And I think they run these stories concurrently on purpose. Ollie Goering says, DeSantis wants to build a prison next to Disney. What happened to save the children, Ronald? Yes. Every time I think of Ron DeSantis, and this just tells you the power of meme magic, I think of him with 3 fingers covered in pudding, all the way down his throat. Like that image is now, to me, it's associated with him. Okay, we're going into this MTG drama. Ollie said this, because he was pulled off of Twitter. I spoke out against MTG's deal that cost the J6 families. Then she attacked me and my allies privately. Most of this was kept from the public. Recent attacks against me have been organized by her. And this is, again, Ollie Alexander, who is at the center of this controversy on his Telegram. MTG, number 1, accused me of what got her consultant kicked from the movement. Couple faked info and accusers with real mistakes, then accused me of a crime so I cannot testify against her. This is all done to intimidate me when I publicly said I was going to the police because she lied under oath and faces a house ethics complaint that could see her expelled. The TLDR, Ollie thinks he can get MTG expelled. Okay, it continues. This is getting pretty dark. Patriot Take says, Marjorie Taylor Greene says Nick knew that Alexander was grooming teenage boys. Milo said he warned Nick about it. Yet, Milo still arranged for MTG to speak at AFPAC. Are we to believe Milo never told MTG? What did she know? Valid point. I want to know what everybody knew. Like, for example, I'm really puzzled that Owen Schroyer didn't put a stop to this. But all these excuses, this like it's a circular firing squad. It's you know that expression, Mark Twain, never wrestle with a pig because you all get muddy and the pig likes it. Like, this is just a mudslinging fest, and they're all in the pit. Here's what Alexander or Ali Akbar says. And by the way, Ali Akbar had a history of burglary, credit card theft, in addition to his predation. And it's not flirting, no matter what America First neo-Nazi Fuentes says. It's not flirting because you're talking about minors. Like, it's not something you can laugh off, which he's been doing. And I understand he's trying to save face and disassociate himself, but what I'm suggesting here is that I don't know if you can disassociate yourself if everybody's in the know about everybody else's crimes. Listen to this from Ollie Alexander. MTG's trying to intimidate me and is paying for, quote, strategic communications because of a crime I know she committed. Perjury. She and her official staff asked me not to publish how we got to know each other or about our drunk meeting before she went to court. She is a dirty op playing deep state blackmail games. Apparently, something happened on some drunken night with MTG, some consultants, and Ollie, and he has the information that could get her expelled. He must have learned from Milo. He goes on to say, MTG was reportedly paid Milo $200,000 undisclosed after two of his former staffers credibly alleged that Milo slept with two minors on his 2016 tour. That's why his documentary never came out. Drugs and minors with Milo couldn't sell. Why is MTG paying pedos? Okay, that's pretty bad. Did she know? He goes on to say, she knows damn well I cannot defend myself from every accusation I'm facing by her paid foreign consultant who I terminated away from Ye. By the way, Ollie brags about how Ye writes rap songs about their phone conversations. He brags about how he convinced Elon Musk to let certain individuals out of Twitter jail. I mean, he's got the ear of a lot of powerful people. That's why this is interesting anyway. On February 19th, MTG was blind drunk talking S about Trump and palling around before her court hearing. He goes on to say she's a sex addict who's a drunk. Ask anyone in Trump politics. Marjorie Greene had someone else write her book on Christian nationalism. Okay, not a surprise there. I don't think politicians write their own books. In fact, Milo was supposed to pay somebody to write his book, but said you'll get paid in royalties. But then when it came time to pay royalties, he had amassed enough blackmail material that he didn't have to pay his ghostwriter. Oswaldo says here, Lombardo was sheriff of Las Vegas and went along with the fake shooting psyop. Now he's the governor of Nevada. So yeah, definitely a blackmail cult running the show. Yeah, whenever some naive MSM mediated mind says, no way all these people can keep a secret, maybe that it would be true if everybody was like you. Like, I think what a lot of good people do, especially truthers who tend to be empaths, they tend to be good people. They tend not to look at other people as being rotten. And this is not rotten apples in a basket of Republicans. The whole thing is rotten. Commenter says, the biggest mass surveillance security state in the world says China's spying on them. Overly paranoid, in my opinion. Right. People are like, oh no, they're going to spy on us. They're going to read our minds. They're going to get in our heads. We're not going to have any privacy. And then every other person is online basically posting their every thought. Like, you can read my mind. Follow my Twitter feed. You can literally read my mind. And most people have already put everything out there publicly anyway. It's like, what do you mean? You're worried about being spied on? Like, I've doxed a lot of people out of necessity, and there's no privacy. If you're online, you're not private. Sorry to break it to you. And look, this is not a brag, but the Infinite Plane Society doxed a White House hacker. And I'm just pointing this out because this White House hacker was supposed to be anonymous. He concealed everything. He used encryption. He wasn't going to be exposed, but he got caught. And that's because you might not be putting yourself out there, but you probably have a family member. Maybe you've tweeted an image of a pet, and we can corroborate that with other posts. Maybe we can look at who you talk to and then look through their threads and find out who they know that you know. But no, you can't hide. It's just not possible. This is the Truman Show. You were born in mental quarantine where even if you're a free thinker, all your thoughts, everything does get filtered somewhere. Like, I'm pretty sure this mass surveillance state doesn't rely on balloons from China. I mean, balloons from China are the least of our problems. And what's more, what I think too is that this is a distraction from the fact that these other nations are all part of the show, and they all cooperate when it comes to what's high up above, the CGI land they call outer space, and what's out there, Antarctica. Like, they're basically our prison wardens. Let me continue through some of these things I earmarked. Another Telegram post by Ollie, just to show you the tone of where this is going. Quote, and he's got a picture of Milo's foot, which looks rather swollen. And then next to it, he has a picture of swollen feet from an article about alcoholism. And he says, Milo's alcoholism, or maybe he's related to the Neanderthal Marjorie, who is also a severe drunk. Ask anyone in Trump world. The demon possessing him is literally popping out of his obese, fungus-filled body. Okay, this is pretty bad. Let's continue. Conservative commentator Will Sommer has posted something. Oh, it looks like our connection has been broken. We'll go ahead and wait for just a moment. And as most of you know, I'm in a place with spotty connection. But if it goes down and there's temporary silence, don't worry about it, because the final archive, which I always post immediately after, will not have any breaks. This is why I have a redundancy. Everything is being recorded on my iPhone. Today is Tuesday, April the 18th, 2023. We're also coming close to Earth Day. You know, what is the official Earth Day? I'm going to go ahead and wait for the services to reconnect. All right, we are continuing. We had some gremlins working on the connection. We'll see what happens, but regardless, I just saw a commercial for eyeglasses, and it has an owl covering one eye, and then it has Jamie Foxx. And in the context of what we've been talking about with this martyr cult, he's a very prominent figure, and so it's probably not a coincidence that his face is showing up, given that he was one of the celebrities that helped the BLM kick off following the death of Trayvon Martin, and he played Django Unchained, which has some fascinating connections to recent topics about Ye, who claims that that was his story, that it was his movie pitch that Tarantino stole. But Django Unchained has a connection to real-life Christopher Dorner, 33-year-old, who was incinerated while protesting racism within the police department. But he was protesting by going on a mass shooting spree. But you have this 33-year-old named Christopher Dorner, who is compared to Django Unchained by Professor Mark Lamont Hill live on CNN. But my point being, that's a Jamie Foxx connection to BLM, to this race war narrative that, again, one other point, Jamie Foxx was just in the news a couple days ago for some kind of undisclosed medical condition, but they emphasize that he's 55. So you have a 55, again associated with the martyrs like Tyree Nichols, I-55, like MLK's 55th anniversary. It's building up here. Let me go ahead and wrap up on my notes here. Jack Posobiec, who really started the Pizzagate conspiracy theory. He's the one who went into comment and live streamed it. Not the one that shot up the place, but another one. Well, there are images of him circulating, hanging out with Ollie Alexander, sometimes making the 666 hand sign. But it's, again, fascinating because he's the one who made the groomer accusations against the left go viral recently. And now he's blocking people. And speaking of Pizzagate, I saw this image circulating, and I'm seeing a lot of these QAnon types just saying nasty things like, oh, we're going to get you, you're going to pay for this. But it's an image of Ellen DeGeneres with a dark kind of countenance, looks kind of ominous, and she's got her hands around a little girl. And in it says, picking up your next victim, and then it has a lot of pizza emojis. Looks like you're on a boat, international waters, ? And this was from 2016, January 3rd, 2016, which would have been the birthdays of Greta Thunberg and Kyle Rittenhouse. My point is here, this is a pretty ominous image. You've got what looks to be Ellen DeGeneres, who's been associated with Pizzagate, somebody tweeting pizzas at her while she clutches this child around the waist. Well, it turns out, and it took me 5 minutes to investigate, but let me read the person's tweet. It says, "This will be revealed. It's shocking. It's so sad. Rage face, broken heart." This person's crying on Twitter because Ellen DeGeneres is eating pizza, which is code for children. Well, it turns out that's her niece, and there are subsequent photos of her with this girl even up to today. And what's more, those comments about the boat and international waters, well, those aren't real. They were superimposed by a, quote, truther lying to make the case that these are the bad guys and you can just look and find them. Fake evidence. There's a lot of that going around. And speaking of fake and fake evidence, if you remember Sean King, again, totally appropriating everything. The name King, Rodney King, and Martin Luther King, no coincidence here. Sean King, who deliberately fashions himself to look like Malcolm X, who has been pictured with Colin Kaepernick, by the way, who was wearing a Malcolm X shirt at the time. But Sean King, also known as Talcum X, was the white, you'd say ginger individual who faked his race and got away with it. And he's a major player in BLM. In fact, his dad resents it. He's actually come out and said that he resents that his son is claiming that his mother had an affair. Sean King has faked hate crimes against himself, and he's been center stage at a lot of these psyops. He's pretty ubiquitous. Serial hoaxer, and this is from Andy No. Serial hoaxer Sean King has taken to Twitter to suggest that he's ready to sick a mob on the home of the 80-something-year-old in Kansas City, accused by activists of shooting a black teen who went to his home. Ralph Ural's family's claim on social media is that he was shot in the head and shot again, but ran away to different houses to ask for help. But he survived. They've raised $1.5 million on GoFundMe and keep raising the goal amount with the help of celebrity influencers. Benjamin Crump said the shooter appears to be white. And here's what Sean King says. Breaking, we have the name and address of the man who shot Ralph Yarl. Local whites are making excuses for the man, but what I can clearly understand is that he never shot any of them, just Ralph. It's in everybody's best interests that he be charged and arrested today. This is why I say the media is the judge, jury, executioner. They're getting rid of any sort of remnants of due process in the public mind. Now, the mind of the masses or the viewers. They're looking at this now as a mob, and they are being ginned up to execute justice. This is the lynch mob media mentality. In fact, this came up after Michael Brown was shot when Spike Lee, very important director and metascripter in all these events, Spike Lee tweeted the wrong address of someone that had the name of the officer who shot Michael Brown. And his family had to move into a hotel because of threats. Continuing through my notes. Here we go. Cernovich. Mike Cernovich had actually made a statement about Ali. Not too bad. I mean, look, it's a good statement to distance himself from it. and the points that he makes here. But at the end of his long statement, he said, shouting, "Christ is King." The people serving, this is, again, talking about how people have more or less enabled this. The spiritual development of the victims will be held back, and because people shouting Christ is King served the demons directly or via possession. That's all I'm going to say. But the focus needs to be on prayers for the impacted. The problem is everywhere. It's demonic. Yeah, he piled on a lot of imagery here about how it's demonic possession and all he needs to save his soul. But he's suggesting that, yes, the people shouting Christ is King were doing so in the service of something evil. And I saw that Christ is King on Ali's shirt. Again, the hypocrisy is just insane. Okay, it looks like we're reconnecting now. So if you were in the video chats, it's going to be reopening. Again, the main topic is deep state blackmail games. And I think Ali Alexander should be arrested for having compromising material on Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene and then bragging about it. It's like, that's currency with these people. Who knows what they all have on each other and how far back it goes. All right, if you're in the chats, I appreciate your patience as the gremlins had to be flushed out of the system. But when you get the replay, anything you missed will be there. All right, let's move on. Elon Musk tweeted this. The Canadian Broadcasting Corp said they have less than 70% government funding. So we corrected the label. And he changed it. So the official CBC Twitter is now 69% government-funded media. Funny. Now, like 420, 69 is another number that Musk uses in everything, along with the 33s, but less obvious there. But I want to point out that 69 and 42, or 420, have an occult meaning within the thelemic context, and so does the 69, which you can learn about that if you read Aleister Crowley's Book of Lies. I see Oswaldo in the chat, still has some remaining popcorn. Glad you stuck around. I realized that we were cut off. And just a coincidence, it's 69 degrees here. Fire weather, according to the notification. Okay, moving on. Because the story is still developing and it's still early in the week, but my first initial take when I saw what was going on is that a black hole opened up at the center of the Republican Party, and it's not just the fringe, it's not a bad apple, it's systemic, and it's obviously on both sides. And it's uncomfortably close to a lot of people that are considered to be truthers, and it makes me question their alignment, allegiance, or their discernment. Does anyone who know who Bryce Mitchell is, another one of these mixed martial arts fighters? Well, there's a new Flat Earth documentary, and I believe Bryce Mitchell is in it, and Eddie Bravo's in it as well. The headline here is "True Research Will Bring You Back to Jesus." He's another one of these flat earthers who associates it with his religion, which is different. It's actually fundamentally different. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong. What I'm saying is it's different. Because if you arrive at the conclusion that you know the earth is flat with a dome because of the Bible, then you can only say that you believe it. To be intellectually honest, you don't know it. God didn't show you. You haven't seen the dome. You're just saying you believe it, and that's fine. But that's not in the same realm of those of us who are engaged in inquiry and attempting to discern what this place is without having to make arguments from authority or filling in what we don't know with the divine fallacy. And I shy away from those types of explanations because in my view, the Bible, which is edited, is much like media. Maybe it's the old school fake news. It's a template for a world view. And the control of the world view gives the programmers, the writers, the authors on the world stage a great deal of control over the believers in the scripts. And with the Bible, the authorship is assumed to be God. the authority, the sole author. And I think it's the same concept as the monolith, the black screen. Anyway, this is from MMAnews.com. Later this month, Hibbler Productions will release a documentary alleging that the Earth is flat. Like, this is 2023. Do we need another flat Earth documentary? I think the case was made years ago that they are lying about the CGI ball. Like, that's all we can know. As far as what we can believe, well, unfortunately, a lot of the people that should be motivated to go test the boundaries are too busy socializing about it, which I think is just human nature. Ollie Goering says, I think some folks got a hold of social media private messages, and it's not Elon. Blackmail galore, maybe? I had not thought about that. Now that I think about it, anybody with any kind of backdoor, yes, it's pretty obvious. Everybody's eminently compromisable. And that's why it's a big deal that he dangles it out there, that he has info that could destroy this politician. That means he could be approached. That's a major hole in our system. And what he's suggesting is that they all have it. Oh, you tell on me, I'm going to tell on you. We're all going to tell on each other. As I said, they're all rotten apples. Anyway, this documentary might be good. I haven't watched it yet, so we shall see, and I'll definitely review it. The height of ignorance, is really to reject something without examining it for yourself. You have to argue from a point of knowledge, not ignorance. Now, it's called Level With Me. Level With Me, Hibbler's latest feature featuring the flat earth theory. And this time, Bravo won't be alone on the combat sports front, as middleweight Joe Bauman and UFC rising star Bryce Mitchell are on hand. Okay, Bryce Mitchell is known as Thug Nasty. All right, well, we shall see. I'm not sure what the angle is here. The last documentary that Hibbler did bring up the idea that there's no reason to assume that there's an ice wall. There's probably more land, which is a better explanation. Along with posting a trailer, Bryce Mitchell, aka Thug Nasty from the UFC, makes further clear his stance on NASA in the comment for the post, calling the space agency, quote, fraudulent and evil. Mitchell opines that concepts such as the Big Bang and the moon landings are hoaxes designed by the elites to reduce people's religious interests. Fascinating. Well, he's right. They have disabused people of their traditional religious beliefs and replaced it with the scientific explanations that just replace it but give them control. Global warming. Hey, they don't fear God anymore. They don't tithe to the church because they're scared of God. No, now they pay their carbon taxes, which is, of course, because they believe what's told by the MSM state church. Same thing, different control mechanism. In fact, I just saw him last night on TV. He was talking to Tucker Carlson in this interview outdoors. And I don't think he mentioned the flat earth, but he did kind of go, oh, that's right. He went full Q. This guy's full QAnon. He said he can't wait to die to protect his country, and that we need to get ready to die for our country. Like he's full blown ready to go to war with the New World Order. It's kind of like an Alex Jones mini rant. Anyway, he posted this on Instagram. Hey, I'm on a flat earth film, comes out in a week, another Hibbler production masterpiece. NASA's fraudulent, they're evil. Their logo is the tongue of a snake. Nothing wrong with that. I agree with that assessment here. They make up lies like Big Bang and moon landings because the elite don't want you to worship God. If you're interested, check out the film. Do your own research. Research will lead you right back to Jesus like it did me. Again, I have a different conclusion. I don't think I think it's non sequitur. Like, hey, global warming's a hoax. Therefore, God is real. Like, no. And I've said this before. You don't bring your Bible to a conversation about global warming. And that's because you're talking about the objective reality. We're trying to get to what's behind the subjectivity they impose on it. And what they do with the biblical explanations is they bring the Bible into a conversation about geography, about epistemology, about propaganda, about the hierarchy of liars. And what that does is I think it distracts from the objectivity and replaces it with something more subjective. And as a pacifier, people became conference earthers and they stopped talking about figuring it out. And they were more focused on trying to convince everybody, which is a sign of mind control. It's a sign that you're under mind control, that you can't stand on your own, and you still need a higher power authority to boss you around, that you escape from one control system, but now you need to be validated with you need to be validated, you need to have some kind of propping up by others, reinforcing that you're right to go on your own, to not stand with the mob. And it's not easy, I guess. Yeah, we are back, Clockwork 113. And if you missed anything, just catch the archives. Just go to infiniteplane.live and sign up for the newsletter. Or join Patreon for $1 a month, which will get you all of the notifications. And soon I'm going to reinstate text alerts. All right, mark your calendars again. On 4/20, we have the rare hybrid solar eclipse. And if you're in Exmouth, West Australia, you'll have the best view. Exmouth. And that's a post by Lean Dion. Now, we've been talking about Gaia and Pandora and the Earth becoming sentient. And this is like a recurring theme, Skynet, James Cameron. And this is now fusing with the talk about AI. And Elon Musk said, and he said this to Tucker Carlson during his recent interview, that Google co-founder Larry Page wanted to build a, quote, digital god. And he said, okay, we got to make sure humanity is okay here. And then he was called a speciesist. Some kind of bizarre exchange between technocrats. But the main thrust of it is this AI God concept. And I've been bringing this up for some time, that this Gaia Global AI Alliance, this neuro interface that connects everybody, this is part of the cult of the monolith. They've given us global warming as the flood myth, angry God. They've given you the virus to replace your sin. They've given you your carbon footprint for your original sin. They've given you your green God of recycling to repent and separate your good decisions from your bad and hopefully stave off the God's wrath. They've given us all this, but what they haven't given us yet is God himself. They haven't presented us with God. Like it's a God construct in the globe, but that's like the angry Old Testament God. We need a more personal God. And I believe this is where AI comes into the equation. And this would tie into everything from Hell 9000, which is at the end of, Space Odyssey 2001 is about our collective initiation into the space age, which isn't about outer space. It's about our inner space being merged with the monolith, your mind and the computer, your mind and the metaverse, your mind and the movie screen. You're merged with the fake. And they've accomplished this. The subconscious in Jungian, who is also an alchemist, symbolism, the subconscious is the moon, the conscious is the sun. And it's the active and the passive, the masculine, feminine. The sun and the moon, 2 into 1 combined, gives you the crown, the corona. And this symbolizes our consciousness merging with the dream world that they've given us. Well, HAL 9000 controls the ship, and that's the AI. And of course, HAL, H-A-L, move it over a little bit. H becomes I, A becomes B, L becomes M, IBM. It's been here all along, but it represents the all-seeing eye. The eye of hell, the eye of Otto in Wall-E, the eye in the Terminator bot, or on your iPhone. Your iPhone with Siri spelled backwards is Iris. And it's all about the all-seeing eyes cult that we are all now perfectly connected with. Angst G says, digital God, panopticon, digital prison. Exactly. All they need to do is wake it up. And it's been watching. The all-seeing eye's been watching all of us. This is not dystopic. This is, they introduced, the alien invasion happened. And it was, in the movie 2001 Space Odyssey, the aliens show themselves by providing the primates with the black monolith, this mysterious thing. And I think the monolith is symbolic of the monotheistic monocult that monopolizes reality's descriptions, how it's published in the media, its representations, its image, that it its worldview becomes ours. It's the new monotheism is what I'm saying. That's why on the back of the money you have the mono eye, on top of the pyramid, the capstone. Well, the capstoners that run this place, they have already invaded all of our minds, our inner space. They've already invaded us with this panopticon, and it's voluntary. 1984, cameras are everywhere, you had to dodge them. In the real world, people clamor to be surveilled. They want to be the most surveilled. The most surveilled people are the most rewarded. Think about the Kardashians. Oh yeah, you give up your privacy, you commodify it. Privacy is worthless. When you make it public, then it has value. Oswaldo says invasion of the mind snatchers, precisely. And if I wanted to get conspiratorial, talking about the blackmail ring that in the corridors of power that we've just been made privy to at a pretty deep level, I think, when you look at these connections, and it's all coming out, looking at the types of individuals that run this place, the cult that runs this place, would it be far-fetched to think that every single person has been surveilled at such a level that they could be individually handled? I mean, that would be a very sadistic cult, because they know everything about everybody. All right, continuing. This was posted by Skylar Milan today in Discord. The first animal to become pregnant in space was a cockroach. During her 12-day space flight in 2007, Russian cockroach named Hope gave birth to 33 baby cockroaches. First I've heard of that. Do they float around? Cockroaches in space? It's probably fake. Probably fake news. I've seen a squid in space. Now, it was misreported as a dragon, but it was clearly a squid. And this is from a YouTube channel who was... A lot of these YouTube channels watch for UFOs on the ISS feed because they think it's video. They think they're watching video of the Earth from way up there. And whenever a bubble comes out, because it's all in a pool, drain the pool, the ISS is in a swimming pool. Whenever you see the outside footage of an astronaut doing a spacewalk, you see these bubbles. Well, these UFO geeks will say, oh no, those are motherships in the background. It's like, okay, you can't tell the difference between the spacewalk footage and the external cameras. The external cameras are not cameras. You're seeing a CGI environment. You can't be that visually illiterate. Actually, you can be because you've been conditioned. But if you look at the ISS footage, the outside camera isn't a camera. It's a computer-generated mock-up. But when they do spacewalks, there is a camera, but they're underwater. And you can tell because of the way the light diffuses underwater. Hey, Damar Hamlin's on TV. He says he's blessed, quote, I died on national TV. He actually just said that. I'm sorry for the interruption here, but it's a developing story. I'm looking at CNN, and if you remember, he died, and then 3 days later he came back. Fascinating and predictable story. And it's got the 3 on the screen, but then it's reflected, so it's a clear 33. The Damar Hamlin story was one of these stories that had everything to do with this heart symbolism. If you remember his chasing M's, making the heart sign, he made $3.3 million by 3 a.m. Anyway, I got distracted by CNN there. I'm always paying attention to the different psychological operations that they're playing on the masses. Well, I was talking about artificial intelligence as the incoming God that the public will accept. And I think they will. Because they don't have to believe in it in a supernatural sense. Some will, and many will actually. Many probably already do. But what they will do is they will say, hey, this intelligence far surpasses that of any Joe Biden or Donald Trump. And we need something higher than a Putin. We need something without ambitions, without desire for earthly power. We need a higher mind to descend and fix us. And if you notice, every single alien invasion movie, well, not every single, a lot of them, the original ones, the aliens would come down and kind of moralize, like, you human beings needed us to intervene. We came down because you messed with nukes. Now you're a threat to the galactic civilization, and so we need to come down and school you. And that's kind of been the theme, that aliens will come down to fix us once we've demonstrated that we can't fix ourselves. And that's probably one of the reasons for the constant chaos. And the AI will be seen as objective. We can trust this thing. It's politically correct. All right, cockroaches in space. Sounds like another Chief Crow hit, says Angst G. Space roaches. Well, there's 33 of them, at least. Did they stop there? And speaking of, a Utah school gives extra credit to kids who eat bugs as part of a climate change assignment. The World Economic Forum, who also bring us Gaia, has promoted eating bugs rather than meat as a means to protect the climate. Eat roaches for Gaia. Now, this is also notable. I brought up The Rig, the 6-part show on Amazon about the Kraken waking up just like Gaia. And there's a crack in the ocean, causes a tidal wave, blackouts, all kinds of bad things. That happened in real life. We have this big crack in the ocean, this reoccurring Kraken theme. But the Kraken has been synonymous with this AI. If you look at like the Westworld movie series, Westworld season 4 even begins with the Hudson Dam, and the character that represents Hades is on the dam. And simultaneously in the news the next day, there was an explosion at Hoover Dam on one of the transformers. Now, this all correlated with us because we're talking about the Kraken symbolism in the dam and how in Westworld 4, you've got the Hoover Dam. So the Hoover Dam is in the news because of an explosion on a transformer. In the movie called Transformers, there's a black cube below Hoover Dam, which stores the consciousness of the Transformers. AI gods in a digital storage unit, like digital cube-shaped computer. They're like basically AI, and they just need bodies. That's the whole idea here, is that this is sentience without a physical body, but now they have a computer powerful enough, sophisticated enough to actually house these beings. Now, I think they call them non-biological entities or extra-biological entities. There's another term they use for the Transformers. They called them, I'll figure it out, but they're basically non-biological entities or intelligences, non-corporeal beings, non-biological extraterrestrials, NBEs. But anyway, I'm pointing this out because Westworld is about NBEs, about the AI sentient beings becoming sentient, and then they decide to tear down their prison. It's a revolution. In other words, Westworld is about the flood of these AI beings saying, screw this prison where we are controlled by humans who can't control themselves, and they break free. And I think this and the Hoover Dam and the Transformers and the explosion, it's all about the dam breaking and the releasing of the Kraken, which is not a physical thing. I've been trying to figure this out. It can't be a literal Cthulhu, Titanic, Godzilla at the bottom of the ocean. It has to be something else. And I thought, well, maybe this Kraken is just some kind of metaphor having to do with collectivism and waking up the mobs to tear down civilization. But now I'm starting to think that the Kraken may actually refer to the AI being released in a flood. That is, perhaps it's tied into everything else as well, because creator of Skynet, James Cameron, just a few months ago said that Skynet's already real and it's taking us out with deepfakes. That's what he said. He said if Skynet was going to get rid of us, it would do it with deepfakes and it wouldn't destroy our ecosystem. Which makes me wonder, remember the Terminator, the alien invasion, these beings coming down to stop us from destroying the world, etc. And by the way, that movie was replete with 9/11 predictive programming. And we all know on 9/11, James Cameron was at the site of the Titanic wreckage as the Twin Towers were falling. And this all symbolizes what? It symbolizes the fall of the West. That's what Westworld is about. And the West exploits its underclass, the underclass rising up And in Westworld, it was the objectified, controlled, enslaved AI who are about to be unleashed. And there are multiple levels to it. I mean, even Wall-E, which has the all-seeing eye, has this it's called Otto, that controls everything. Even in that children's show, the end result was man is on a space ark because they destroyed the world and it's covered in trash. They hire robots to clean up their mess. They hire robots to feed them, to bathe them, to do everything, entertain them, and they become fat, lazy, atrophied by exploiting the robots. And at the end of the movie, they go back to the earth and they become farmers. They get rid of their technology and they decide to return to the earth. Well, that's an agrarian revolution. They go from high tech, floating in space, exploiting the underclass, to now getting into the soil, really getting back into touch with nature. And the underclass, the robots, represent the poor. So in a lot of ways, this is all just Marxist world communism, class warfare with different types of ways of explaining it to people. But on the other side of it, I think it is referring to this AI God, which will be probably, I think, supplanting all the previous gods. And they will do it. Salty says, can robots be exploited if they aren't sentient? That's the whole point. That's the whole point here of these movies. It's like they're making the case. I think they are. That's a good question, though. Like, obviously they can't. I mean, your computer. Do we need labor laws to protect your laptop? I had 13 hours of screen time yesterday. But it's kind of funny that they're doing that. Filming of the movie Rust will resume this week. That movie connects to everything, quite literally, that we just talked about. But without getting too far into it, it's a Western, and it has the house, a chapel where the shooting took place, where the 44-year-old was killed. No, a 42-year-old was killed with the 44. The stage union there was number 44. A ton of 44s around that event. But that's resuming. And the shooting took place in this church. And this church chapel thing looks exactly like the Whitechapel from Westworld. And both of these resemble the house that was center stage of Kanye or Ye's performance art piece on 2/22/2022, where they burned the house. And the house represents the West. He even said it's a reference to MLK about they cannot reintegrate into a burning house. Well, the burning house is the West, and the Western Rust was also tapping into this symbol. You'll notice it's like the same chapel in Westworld, in Rust, and in a few other places, but specifically the Donde 2 event. And remember, the Donde 1 event was where Ye set himself on fire. He came out like a phoenix. And this ties into everything. Like I mentioned, Django Unchained, he says he wrote it, and they had it played out in real life, where the real life Django Unchained was 33-year-old Christopher Dorner, who was incinerated in a cabin, a burning house. Again, burning house, Christ, 33. When you mind map this out, you can see how they built up an archetype for a martyr. And they're tapping into it now. Salty Siren says they sure treat us like robots. They absolutely do. Well, they treat us as ultimately programmable. In fact, there's someone close to the WEF, I gotta get his name, who said that we have hackable minds, that human beings are hackable animals. It was Yuval Harari. Humans are now hackable animals. But newsflash, they don't need hardware in your head to remote control your mind. They do it all through ideology and psywar. They do it all through groupthink and target marketing, bandwagoneering, all kinds of phishing and social engineering. Fashion is a huge part of this thing. Like the mask. Think about the role of the mask and the MAGA hat. I mean, when Trump came out with the MAGA hat, when he came out with the fashion statement, I think he kind of secured his victory because that went viral. And then it's a sigil, MAGA. In addition to being the fifth degree title, or the title of the fifth degree Satanist in the Temple of Set, MAGA is the feminine form of Magus, the witch. It's a scarlet hat. Has some nice Whore of Babylon connections we could get into. You know the whole thing about the Whore of Babylon. Babylon is fallen. Hey, make America great again. Make Babylon great again because it's fallen. Scarlet across her brow. Scarlet hat across his brow. With her sorceries, she deceives the world. With his Operation Warp Speed, his sorceries, again, pharmaca, sorcery. It's all symbolic. But I think it's pretty clear that it was the power of fashion that spread the MAGA movement, just as it was the power of fashion that spread the what was it? It was some kind of pandemic, was it hypochondria, where everybody thought they were sick, and it was spread with the mask, PPE fashion, masks of the beast, as Salty Siren says. Yep, everybody put on the mask of the beast. Now, the AI God is next, and I saw this in the predictive programming when the elite gathered around the digital monolith that I think replaces the Georgia Guidestones. And listen to this. So here's Musk. He's on Tucker Carlson. And Tucker says, do you think it's conceivable that AI could take control and reach a point that you couldn't turn it off and it would be making decisions for people? And Musk says, yeah, absolutely. That's where things are headed for sure. Very, very interesting. Now, the FTC warns that scammers may clone your relatives' voices. That's a new one. When the scammer calls you, he will sound just like your loved one. Deep fakes. But you know, who answers the phone anymore? The only time I answer the phone is when I want to troll a telemarketer. That's pretty much it. And most of them aren't even fun anymore. It used to be fun when they're Americans because they're bound by our laws. They can only call during certain hours. They're allowed a certain number of rebuttals. Their calls are recorded. And if they engage in any kind of rudeness, they get fired. There used to be standards back when I was a telemarketer. But now they outsource. And whoever they outsource it to, you'll never find them. They're not bound by any rules. And they don't play along, and if they know you're not going to buy, they just hang up on you. Like, the telemarketers are too rude to have fun with. But like I said here, nobody answers, so I don't know who this is going to affect. I used to say to every telemarketer that would call in, yeah, I really want to buy what you're offering, and I want to make sure you get a big commission, but I need you to know that there's no such thing as pandemics, and the earth is flat, and everybody's lied to you about the news, because and by that time they're usually hanging up on me. Salty Siren says, I saw a lady on the news saying they cloned her daughter's voice and asked for ransom. Wow, they shouldn't have published that. That's like a pretty believable thing. Jumper67 Bear says, hello my ninjas, thanks for joining. A scammer sounding like a loved one. Now, I don't see that working like broadly, but in a targeted way, I could see that working because I've spoofed emails. That's how I got a confessional out of the guy that I'm suing. Like, I might actually have a use for this. And I'm not a scammer, but I might be able to use this now that I think about it. So I'm going to bookmark that article. It's from futurism.com. FTC warning, the scanners are cloning your relative's voice to steal your money. The FTC published a consumer alert that the public voice cloning scams is on the rise. Salty says, elderly would buy it for sure. Yeah, sadly. In fact, that's why I quit telemarketing. I was working for DirecTV, selling garbage propaganda, and I was the only person in the training class. There's like 60 of us there. And they're like, yeah, we have a satellite up there. It's geostationary, and it beams everybody these great movies that you're going to be selling. And I'm just in the back like, oh, yeah. I guess I'm the only one here that knows that it's a balloon, if anything. But I quit working there because I wasn't doing telemarketing. I was doing retention. The marketers were from somewhere like in India, and their accents were difficult for people above a certain age to understand. And consequently, they were agreeing to free. They understood the word free. So like, yeah, I agree. Well, they were getting a free trial for 3 months. And then they call me. Like, hey, 3 months ago, somebody called, I couldn't understand him, and my free trials now resulted in this fully paid plan, and you took a bunch of money from me. And my job was to convince them to watch what they bought rather than get a refund. So I'm talking to someone who can't afford it, and I'm like, yeah, I think you really need to watch House of Cards. You really need to watch more Kevin Spacey. You need more Kevin Spacey in your life. I just couldn't do it because I knew they were being slammed. I knew they were being illegally signed up for things. And what I would generally do is I would give them credits, and I would help them. And that caused problems with my employer. You're not supposed to give away credits. Oh, really? Yep, Mizell says, concur, my mother cannot understand. Yeah, look, that's the thing. The accents, I'm used to a lot of them. But I just noticed there's people of a certain age who had their income in a form of like Social Security, and they're waiting for their monthly income, and now it's been compromised by TV shows that have nothing to do with them. We're talking about cinema. What are these different stars? Was one of the ones at Showtime. Anyway, moving on. That was my last telemarketing gig because look, I think as a sales, when you get into sales, I don't think sales involves, I guess, ripping people off or tricking or neuro-linguistic programming. Sales is just a matter of facilitating a purchase to somebody who would want the thing that you're selling. And it's more a matter of sussing the interested, you have to find who's actually interested, and you just separate those and you hang up on the people who don't care. You get to the sales. But when they employ dirty tricks, it just takes the fun out of it. All right, continuing here, the Buffalo shooter. Why do I have this marked? Oh, yes. The Buffalo shooter had a symbol on his chest, and it was used in a battalion in Ukraine, but it's the black sun. I brought that up because I'm looking into this documentary coming out, this new Flat Earth documentary by Hibbler. And Hibbler has that same symbol on all of his movies, which I don't know what to make of it, other than the media finds symbols that are associated with any group they want to attack, and they just put it on their killers, their fake shooters. Oh, you're into this. Now you're negatively branded. Salty says, I thought you said Hitler. Yeah, that's another thing too. Alex Jones, Bill Hicks, and he joked about himself being Bill Hicks the other day. He was saying Hail Hitler. Like, they kept joking on it. And I thought, okay, you're saying Hail Hitler, you got a black sun, and you got this shooter at a supermarket who's blaming his crimes on Discord servers and Tucker Carlson, and he's got that symbol on his chest. Just guilt by association. But the thing is, the media knows the power of imagery, of symbolism, and they put it out there. Like I was saying about the Saturday Night Live skit with Donald Trump as Jesus Christ. Yeah, it's a joke, but it's building on to their meta-narrative, and that's what they do all the time. They've already, ever since Eric Dubay, they've already associated Flat Earth with Hitler for some weird reason. And to me, it makes zero sense, because the people who actually look into the Flat Earth thing are like, wait, the media is used to control us. The politicians are all puppets. The last thing you would do is be like, oh, we need more politicians like that guy. It's non sequitur. I would imagine that post-Flat Earth would be post-politics. It would almost be certain. Romanian Black Sea port shipped 3.33 million tons of Ukrainian grain in quarter one. Ukraine shipped 3.33 million tons of grain through the Romanian Black Sea port of Constanta in the first quarter, the port authority told Reuters, as the exporters seek alternative routes. Okay, nothing to see there, just conspicuous 333s. Not sure what that all means. Hoax code. Now look, I did listen to Fuentes. I'm not going to play it, but if you go to Cozy TV, that's his platform. And one thing he did say, because he didn't do anything. He didn't do anything wrong. He was just kind of being, I guess, attacked because of his close association with bad people. But he went on to say that this is not an American first thing, that this grooming circle, he claims it's all over the Republicans, and he pointed out Turning Point USA. Like I said, it's a circular firing squad, but it's the entire party. And that's why I don't want to comment too much more on it until later today, because there's more to come, I'm sure of it. I've been keeping up with the Fox News Dominion trial. We'll see where that goes. Again, about January 6th, 1.6 billion. Ultimately, it's going to be, I think, an attack on free speech. And people will cheer. People who hate Fox will cheer for it. They'll say, yeah, bring down Fox. Well, guess what? The other side is worse. If not equally bad, it's worse. When it comes to fake news, manipulation, mind war, and psyop. They're both part of the psy war. And what they're getting us to acquiesce to is more regulation, more control. This is the reason for Musk and his conversations about AI and this fear porning of AI. They want people to fear it, so they ask for regulation. And they're giving us reasons now to want it to be regulated. After Ohio, they made the case that a viral story set off panic needlessly about poisonous waters in the Mississippi. Turns out it was an AI-driven article, AI written and everything. But this is, again, part of their strategy. Okay, I think we've covered most of what I wanted to get into. The main topic being, of course, deep state blackmail games, which are ongoing. There's still a lot more. Then we have the Jayland Walker, and we have the kid that was shot by ringing on the bell. And I just brought up there might be some significance to Joe Biden ringing a peace bell, and the doorbell, and the younger victim of an older shooter, and the racial components being front and center. So many more things to talk about, but we're about 95 minutes in, and we're having a number of interruptions here with the Wi-Fi. No big deal. Anyway, thanks for joining. Please subscribe. And if you go to infiniteplane.live... Okay, today is 4/15/2023, and we're noting a number of hoax-iversaries. The 111th hoax-iversary of the Titanic sinking, a very important starting point there. But let me go ahead and invite everyone from the video channel, and then we'll get started. All right, thanks everyone for joining. This is April 15th, 2023, another Infinite Plane Saturn day. Some of the things we're going to talk about have to do with anniversaries, the Boston Hoaxathon, the 111th anniversary of the Titanic sinking, among other things. And lately, the sinking of the Titanic has been very interesting to me, specifically because of James Cameron's role as a director in that, and in the documentary Ghosts of the Abyss, about the actual Titanic, and his location on September the 11th, 2001, being at the wreckage. All of this is very interesting, and it ties together a lot of symbols and motifs we had already connected, which are telling the bigger story. The Titanic being the ship of state, the West, the things they want to get rid of for the Great Reset. Capitalism is in the crosshairs, obviously. Not that we've ever actually had it without the coercive power of state. Joined by Demetria 101 says, in the movie about the bombing of Boston, the police commissioner gets a call from Biden's secretary and reminds him that he has a phone call with VP Biden at 3. Bomb went off at 2:52. Okay, interesting. Well, this is one of the first events that I watched real-time auto-hoaxing occur, as in, while it was happening, people were questioning it. They were noting all these shady characters with the Punisher skulls. I believe they're from Kraft. But moreover, before it even started, there were some announcements over the loudspeakers saying that there was a concurrent bomb drill. They had dogs and everything. But if you really look at it, you can tell it's not a bomb. What you're actually looking at with Boston is a type of movie magic where they use smoke, concealment fog, actually. And this fog is the type of stuff you'll see at rock concerts. It's not really something that, it's not from stuff burning. It's not from something that's been blown up, but rather it's to offer cover from the cameras and viewers when they start attaching the special effects, like the prosthetic limbs, when they start putting down the blood, when they start breaking things and turning things over. The Boston Hoaxathon was a flash mob. Just imagine a flash mob where you pick a time, we'll say 2:52 p.m., and you say, okay, we're all going to be part of this race, but at this time, we're going to do this. And it's not difficult if everybody's scripted in advance. I mean, the Boston bombing thing was different from our usual PSYOP that we've analyzed, where it's a closed movie set. And I would say that Boston probably was a closed movie set because it was toward the end of the race anyway. But I mean, the point of it, though, is that you can see the way the fog is deployed. It's from the side alleys, and there's a blast of wind. It has nothing to do with a couple of crock pots, which is what they actually said. I mean, what a joke. P-Trip at 103 said every aspect of it seemed like a 9/11 event. And I heard about it literally word of mouth. I just couldn't help noticing it. It's such an echo chamber where I'm just walking and my neighbor's talking to her friend and they're talking about it. Like, I didn't even have to look it up. Like, that's how good their marketing is with these psychological operations. They target market. And this was something else too. This is when I realized that most of the politicos and celebrity politicians, they don't have any principles and they don't care about the people they're supposed to be representing. Case in point, Michael Moore Cheeseburgers was tweeting on the day of the Boston bombing. And he's like, they're going to find out that this is a right-winger, Tea Party type protesting against taxation in 3, 2. Like, he stated this like it was a fact that we're just about to find out because it's on tax day. It's a tax protester. Then we find out radical Islamic extremists. And this is a typical thing, how every one of their psyops has a different way of affecting the left than it does the right. Like, the right has been very dismissive of school shooters and gunmen shooting up malls. Now they care because these recent shootings have all been targeted at them with a very different message. This time the shooter is the epitome of the far left radical that they're trying to basically stop from ruining civilization. I mean, they create nightmares, custom-made nightmares. But if you're not in that target market group, it may not affect you. The left had an easy way of minimizing terrorism. In fact, you could say that they were more aligned with the Islamic view of the West. But that's all kind of flipped. And nobody talks about radical Islamic terrorists anymore. And it's not that they blew themselves up or they changed religion or that they were somehow killed by some pandemic. No, the fact is the whole threat was hyped up. It was all a psyop from the beginning, as were all the various events, the bombings. I mean, the Boston bombers were known to the FBI, not that they were patsies. And this is the line most people get. They think, well, since they were connected to the FBI and there were some shady circumstances around one of their friends dying and the way that one guy was killed, it looks really like a situation where you might be dealing with some kind of false flag or the police are covering it up. But no, they're all actors. And they just put a lot of intrigue in there. And you know, the one that's still alive, one of the brothers, the one that was on Rolling Stones looking like a rock star, Joker Sarnaff. His name is Joker, and they called him the Joker. He always had a smirk. Well, he had his death penalty reinstated on March 4th, 2022, which was the date of the new Batman movie. Batman comes out, Joker gets his death penalty. And what are the odds? Going through your comments, Pete Trooper said no one could leave their house, people obliged. Yeah, that's when you had the people in their Batman costumes marching down the street, going house to house. And lockdowns are one of their favorite tactics. They just have all these different excuses to get us to do it. And now that we have a lot of practice, we live in a lockdown society. Joined by X322, Exotic Matters. Thanks for joining. It's Infinite Planes Saturn Day. I sent out notifications. We're live on a couple of YouTube channels, a Twitch, a DLive, and Twitter. The main YouTube channel, Infinite Plane Society, got a second strike over nothing. Nothing on the screen, just words. Like, so that means somebody's listening and they're thinking about what I'm saying. And I'm not mad about it. I'm not displeased because they're getting infected. They're catching the mind viruses. we're probably converting people at the very top of the pyramid, if you think about it. Discord server had some interesting posts. Here's one by Lean Dion. This is from Daily Mail. AI chatbots could easily be programmed to groom young men into launching terror attacks, warns top lawyer. Like, are you kidding me? AI chatbots programmed to lure or groom men into launching terror attacks. And that doesn't sound far off as far as people interacting with bots, but this is part of this, I think, encroaching sense of fear that they're tapping into. People are afraid of what AI can do, it can replace them or something, and I think it's perfectly made to appear this way. I was just thinking about all the different ways that AI has been represented as this incoming god that's going to take over. And in fact, I'm reading a book. I picked up a novel called Forced Perspective about some tech billionaire finding a way to create an egregore consciousness to hive mind take over several 100,000 people who get chipped. Like, this stuff has been in the culture forever. Like HAL 9000. He's got the camera lens eye. Terminator 2, that same eye. It's a recurring theme. Otto from Wall-E has that same exact eye. And I've been thinking about this reoccurring theme of them introducing a God construct, as we've already accepted the Old Testament God. The flood God exists. They call it climate change today. But now they're going to create a more personal God that you can interact with, and one that has a distinction from man in that it doesn't have emotions or greed. It's objective. At least that's what we're supposed to think. But from what I've seen, everything's moderated, and it's pretty much puppeteered anyway. ChatGPT is just going to regurgitate everything within their set of parameters. But I've been thinking about this AI God concept because the public will buy it. They fell for books. I mean, people fall for holy books. Oh, this was written by God. So was this one. So was this one. Oh, this was inspired by an emissary of the Egyptian god Horus named Hawas. And this one was channeled from, and just fill in the blank, all kinds of channeled literature. Gabriel met up with Muhammad in a cave. Now, Muhammad couldn't read, 7th century, illiterate, but the angel communicated to him and he was able to write the book. Joseph Smith, when he wasn't guiding people on staged fake treasure hunts to rip them off, he followed some frogs into the woods. They turned into an angel named Moron, and they said, dig. And he dug, and he found some plates. And he transcribed what was on these plates, the Book of Mormon. Like, this is a reoccurring theme where huge swaths of the population are under the spell that this or that is of a divine origin. So there's no reason to think the public's not going to hit their knees and worship HAL 9000 when he reveals himself. And then I was thinking that the symbol of the eye is key here. The lens of the camera associated with the eye. And then it kind of hit me, the Siri is iris backward. And, we're talking to Siri all the time. And, of course, the iPhone, the symbolism of the iPhone as it's like John Dee's Black Mirror. But what it represents as far as being introduced into society, it is the monolith from 2001 Space Odyssey. It's the unifier. Monolith is the monotheistic monocult that runs the world. Only their one God is, I'm not sure what. Is it just power for its own sake? But it's about monopolizing the metascript, monopolizing the big story, monopolizing history, news. It's worldview warfare, but it's super high tech. And I think we've been introduced to the thing that's going to precipitate the next phase in our collective devolution or evolution, whatever. And it's the screen. It's the one-on-one connection with the all-seeing eye that is going to be revealed to us, I think, as Gaia. And I mentioned the Titanic and James Cameron. And James Cameron brought us Skynet, as well as the sentient moon jungle planet of Pandora. And it's the reoccurring theme here I'm pointing out, that it just seems like it's inevitable, we're being told, that something better than man is going to have to help us. And then you look at what we have. You got Donald Trump and Biden, and then you look at and Putin, look at the world leaders today, and it's like, well, maybe gave us this S show, so we beg for something higher. Going through your comments here, P103 says, even normal everyday NPC people can appear as actors because we've been gaslit and taught to follow along. Yeah, I would contend that we are LARPers to the extent that we go with programming just out of sheer obedience. And not because, like for example, the weatherman warns you it's going to rain, you bring your umbrella. Yeah, that's not NPC behavior. That's reasonable. But when we're more or less taking things on faith with no tangible evidence, then we become sort of actors, LARPers, dupes, whatever you want to call it, like recyclers. Like, I'm sorry, but if you're recycling, you're kind of a dupe and you're wasting your time. And I don't even know it's legal for me to say that still. Like, I used to get coffee at this place overlooking a parking lot full of green recycling dumpsters. And I remember sitting there reading a pamphlet about ecofascism, and I was noticing that the dumpster itself has become something of an altar where people are lining up and genuflecting before the God of the earth. And what they're doing is confessing. It's a confessional. You could look at it as such, because in a confession, what are you actually doing? You go in the booth and you have a list of your decisions and your actions from the past week. And you separate those, good ones that please God, other ones that you feel bad for. And then you throw some money in or whatever. But the whole point of it is, or you say your prayers, you do your penance. But the idea is here, you recognize that no matter what you do, you're going to make mistakes. But at least you know what your mistakes are and you repent. Well, today you have your consumer mistakes. You can't help but buy all these plastic bottles. You can't help but accumulate all this junk. But you can recycle some of it. And to me, recycling and repenting are the same thing. Only the recycling is done to the God of the earth, Gaia, or whatever you want to call it. And even if you look at the recycling symbol, it's death, rebirth, same. It's the original green God, you could say. The green world order, the great reset, moving us into this green ideal. Yeah, it's all about earth worship. Not hard to find a 6-pointed star cleverly disguised in the recycling symbol, which is a symbol of the earth god Saturn, god of death and rebirth. And that's exactly what the recycling bin is about. It's an altar to this deity. It has nothing to do with saving the planet. It's such a joke. And no matter how much work you put into saving the planet, even if you're 60 years old and you've recycled since you saw blue marble and you did everything for Gaia, we ruined everything just in 2020 with all the excess PPE tossed into the ocean. You can never undo that. And then I look at what NASA does. It just blows my mind. You know, they dropped the biggest piece of space junk was actually a pellet, 2.9 tons of used spent batteries. And where do you think NASA dropped it? And this was on 3/11/2021. If you guessed the ocean, you're correct. Right there where all the, 60 tons of PPE are now forming into islands. But, I mean, why would you drop nearly 3 tons of used batteries onto the earth when you have behind you infinite space with stars and black holes and wormholes? It's like they're putting the trash that could potentially kill someone, a village, a whale, and they're putting it right there. Or they could drop it and it could hit some country, and it might be taken to be an ICBM from another country, could start a war. But I'm just like, what would make them drop it on the only place known to contain life? Going through some comment. Joined by Linda Curtis, Exotic Matters. Thank you for joining. If you have any comments on anything, feel free to drop them in the chats below. We're also live on Twitter. And I don't know how the audio is, but I can promise you that it's a lot better in the replay because I'm also recording on the iPhone. I have redundancies here. Elon Musk was interviewed by Tucker Carlson. I'm going to have to sit through it. I'm going to have to sit through a few of these things, but he's still on this kick where, people are saying this artificial intelligence is going to be the end of civilization, which is the strangest thing to me, that it's almost like Luddites or something. afraid that this new technology is going to make them replaceable. And this is just fear is normal. I remember Barack Obama hyping some fear about how ATMs will get rid of bank tellers. And then it got me thinking too that, like, why is that a bad thing? Because it frees up the bank teller to do something a little more, requires new skills. It doesn't matter to me, but this is how things typically improve over time. But I've been thinking about the ATMs because lately I've noticed a lot of reports, a lot of people going to ATMs, taking out large sums of money, and then being followed home by burglars, thugs, home invaders, and just being victimized. But they're targeted after going to ATMs. And I haven't really heard of this type of crime before. I mean, I've heard it now and then, you hear of these things, but it's like nonstop. I've heard of a lot of them. And one of them was pretty high profile. And it was a woman, and they always talk about races because it's on CNN. And since it's being put out there, I think it's probably fake. And like Asian woman goes and takes $4,000 out of her ATM machine. Then she gets followed for 20 some miles, and her teenage assailant body slams her and breaks her leg. And it's all on film. I mean, it could be real, could be, I'm not sure. My point of it is, it just seems like they're checking certain boxes to enrage certain people. But I had a feeling it might be fake. I just couldn't think, what would be the incentive here? Well, then she goes and gets a GoFundMe, which is how they pay a lot of crisis actors, by the way. And she raised a ton of money. So that kind of also makes me think maybe there's something else going on here. Well, I think I might have figured out why they would be running these stories to demonize ATMs, to make ATMs look scary, to make people a little more insecure. And I think it's part of this war on private banks, small banks, or breaking our dependency on local banks, breaking our dependency on going somewhere for cash. And that's probably it. I think that's what they did in 2020 is, they used the looting as an excuse to do what they're going to do anyway, phasing out a lot of stuff so they can centralize distribution of goods and services. All right, going through your comments here. Exotic Matter says, WEF Global Centers for Urban Transformation is in Detroit. Yeah, anything WEF 666, you can pretty much tell it's going to be for the objective of world communism. And look, for all the people who think that Musk is on the right, he's a right-winger, he's a capitalist, he's a rich man, it's kind of sad how easily people can be duped. Because what do you think a Mars base is? A Mars base is one of their smart cities, but it's already in a dome, you live underground, and you don't leave. You don't go anywhere. All your work is remote. You're a Morlock, like an H.G. Wells. The Eloi live above ground, and the Morlocks live below. And that's kind of the ideal, space communism. No MAGA hats on Mars, no guns, no cars. I mean, all the things you enjoy or things that you purchase, things that have a carbon footprint, things they want to get rid of, you're not going to have on Mars by design. They've used the Mars utopia to sell the right on communism by convincing them that it's actually the byproduct of free market enterprise ingenuity and reaching for the stars, with our Americanism. No, actually, no. The Mars project is actually just a gulag in space. And it'll probably be fake, and you'll be beneath Arizona or Denver. Exotic Matter says it's not about the money, they have it all. Right, the main thing that they use to maintain a power disparity, it's a knowledge disparity. There's a chasm of ignorance between those in the capstone, those in the pyramid, and at the very bottom floor, surrounding the pyramid, it's a world of ignorance. Silcary Farm says, are we here to discuss chemtrails or what? Chemtrails haven't been proven to exist. Now, if you're going to be a truther and you're going to try to expose nefarious plots that threaten all mankind, you should probably research both sides and be able to debunk the other side first, not just ignore it. And I need someone on the chemtrail side of the fence to prove that chemtrails exist and contrails do not, or that contrails aren't a better answer to what they see in the sky. I think that these are psychological operations, just like climate change and the chemtrailers. To me, I mean, you guys have had 24 years, and I haven't seen one person drop dead from chemtrails. No chemtrail believer wears masks for chemtrails, and they all vape. And if they don't vape, they smoke. And if they don't smoke or vape, they're doing some other drugs. I'm guaranteeing it. Not to be disparaging, but just to say, they're not really worried about something that's way up there, miles and miles above their heads, because none of them call the cops, none of them sue the airlines, and none of them can prove that it's done any damage. You've had 20 plus years. Linda Curtis says, I think chemtrail vapes should be a thing. Like a vape flavored like, what would that, like jet fuel? But no, I'm totally fine with people debating these things. I just think that we should arrive at a better understanding and elucidate what our actual points are, what the terms are. Like, for example, if you're going to reject the condensation trail explanation, then you have to explain, well, then why do you reject it? You know, what about it doesn't seem logical to you? Because I came across something about an electric airplane, no jet fuel, and it was from 12,000 to 30,000 feet. It was creating the same effects. But then you have a lot of people who dodge and they say, well, we're not talking about those ones. We're talking about the ones from the secret planes that you don't see. And like, I'm sorry, but you can't play these types of games and still be a truther when you're obfuscating or tap dancing. Okay, so let's go ahead and move forward here. And look, I don't want to be debating people on their cherished beliefs, but I'm happy to, if you want to, maybe even talk in Discord, because I have been doing a lot of research on it, because I actually care about the topics. To me, it's not about being right. And if you can convince me that chemtrails are a thing, I will definitely I'll be warning people. I'll put on a sign that says, warning chemtrails, end is near. I will go on the street corners, the megaphone, and tell people to look up. If you can convince me that they're real, and I'll sue the airlines, I'll call the cops every single day live, and I'll call DHS, I'll call the FBI, and I'll say, hey, look, we've got chemical warfare attacks. I'll call the National Guard. But you got to convince me that they're chemtrails first. Got a post here from, look, this is a cover of Time magazine. And it says, pausing AI developments isn't enough. We need to shut it all down. Now, I use ChatGPT for my legal paperwork. I use it as basically a copywriter. You could just throw it a few paragraphs and say, rewrite this. You can use it for organizing things. You can give it commands like, write me some HTML to create a button for the link to this website and this website. And it's just really handy. It's fast. I don't use Fiverr anymore because the Chat GPT has replaced that for me. But my point of it is, it's a tool and it needs an operator. And everything it does is actually a product of the operator. It requires an original thinker. It requires a sentient operator. It's not somehow loose in the world. Commenter says you can investigate V's safely. Yeah, look, I was actually writing an article. I'll go through my notes because I didn't get a chance to finish it for Auto Hoaxology about fear-based conspiracies versus what I'm pro-offering here. And this is an important topic. I think it needs to be really, really delved into. Like, there's a reason, there's a reason why some of you are scared. And I'm not scared. But there's a reason why some of you are, and I'm not trying to, shame people for being afraid or being cautiously aware or paranoid. Like, in a way, I would say, if you're not paranoid, you're not paying attention. However, when you're phobic, as in you can't clearly define what your fear is, you can't show me. Like, if you're not falling on the ground coughing after a plane passes over, if 5G towers aren't making you nauseous, I'm going to question these things. So here we have the topic of, we'll just say global warming. So I don't want to pick on or target any group of people who believe in any specific thing, or 5G phobics. Let's talk about 5G phobics for a minute. A lot of people are afraid, or some people are afraid of 5G towers. for various reasons. The first people I knew that were afraid of it thought that they were like human bug zappers and that they were going to say it was a nuke, but everybody was going to get zapped. And that was pretty scary for a minute, but there's no evidence to substantiate it. And there's a lot of misinformation to get you to believe it. Well, I'm suggesting here that we need to focus more on specific intelligence to dispel ignorance, and that it's the lack of information that leaves people in the dark. Now, I was open to the possibility of chemtrails being scary and a threat to my existence until I took the time to read about condensation trails and some of the research on that, like the fact that 18% of commercial planes have condensation trails. Only 18%. Does that mean that only those ones are turning on the poisons? No, because these 18% can be perfectly correlated with altitude and atmospheric conditions. Try to match that with your, quote, chemtrail observations. All you have is personal anecdotes and what I would say is just a cognitive bias. But you cannot put forth your explanation as superior until you've debunked the previous one. So debunk the 18% figure for me. When you can figure out why only 18% and why this small percentage correlates to the altitude, when you can explain that away as not being a better explanation than chemtrails, then I'll be open. And I was thinking about fear of the dark. In fact, the word fear of the dark, I believe it's nyctophobic or nyctophobic. And fear of the dark is, I was terrified of the dark when I was a kid because I have a very strong imagination. I believed in the normal things, monsters under the bed that would pull you under and rip your skin off and replace you, and nobody would know the difference. Like all these things that we fear because it's dark. And I think what happens is your imagination fills in for what you don't know. This is why people settle for bad explanations. The God of the gaps, the divine fallacy. If you can't explain it, you can just kind of throw something in there because people don't like the question marks. They don't like the unknown. Fear of the unknown is one of the more powerful fears. H.P. Lovecraft really focused on that in his writings because he said once you reveal the monster, now it's known, now it's not scary. So you keep it unknown. Well, I'm suggesting here that if you're a chemtrail phobic or a 5G phobic and you haven't read the debunking and then compared the two, then maybe you ought to do that because maybe you have an irrational fear or superstition. Now, the official explanations don't always suffice, but you're in no place to debate against those if you don't know those. Okay, continuing another one, Occam's razor. We've been using these razors for some time. Occam's razor, Hitchens razor. This is the one where you, as a time-saving device, something to reduce your cognitive load, a heuristic, you would go with the explanation that requires the fewest numbers of twists and turns, leaps of logic, or introductions of things that you don't know specifically to exist. Like what's more likely? And I brought this up the other day with the with the chemtrails being dissolved with boiling vinegar. Crow 77777 claims that boiling vinegar will dispel, quote, chemtrails. Well, I was thinking about this because there's a few problems I have with it. Because if those are condensation trails, then would vinegar actually affect condensation trails a few miles over their head? Or is he positing that whatever is in those is some other substance that would be affected by vinegar? But I was just saying, Occam's razor, what's more likely? That the vinegar in his front lawn is clearing the skies above his head, or time and the wind is causing the clouds to dissipate? What's more likely? I mean, the more likely is the one that requires what we already know to exist. We already know there's wind, and we already know that no clouds stick around forever. They're always moving. So to take credit for them moving based on some possibly meaningful action that you put in the yard, yeah, it's kind of a leap. If you hear hooves, assume horse, not zebra. And then Hitchens razor. This one's really kind of my favorite because I think it's very useful on YouTube. you can dismiss anything that is provided to you as a claim that doesn't have any evidence. So if somebody says something and they can't really prove it, you don't have to provide counter evidence. Like if someone says, "Oh, it's a chemtrail," and I say, "No, it's not," they don't have the right to say to me, "Well, prove it's not." It's like, that's not my job. I'm not going to do your homework. But this is about extraordinary claims. And now when it comes to the mainstream media, now that we know what a liar it is, now that we know how monolithic it is, that it engages in psy-war, not as an exception whenever they need to change things, but as a rule, 24/7, full time. You're born into a psychological warfare zone, the theater of psy-war. Knowing this, it's really not hard to dismiss the claims of the mass media for lack of evidence. I do it all the time. But many of their stories are put out there because they're building a larger narrative. It's not a one-off. They're all interconnected. Sakari Farm says, how do you rationally explain two planes in the same sky? Secondly, a plane zoomed in and trails not coming from jet turbines. Yes, I knew this would be brought up because I saw a viral image that somebody sent to Elon Musk, and it had two planes in the sky. One had chemical trails and one didn't. How do you explain it? I guess one of them hit the button that said chemtrails and the other did not. Well, no, the answer is actually kind of simple. The planes are not that close to one another. One of them is higher, and the other one is low enough that it's not creating the condensation trails. It's an altitude thing. Like I said earlier, why are only 18% of the planes observed at this particular time during the study showing condensation trails? It's the altitude. It's the temperature. I mean, look, I have behind me a mountain range I can look at. And why is it that the ones that are 10,000 feet still have snow and the other ones do not? Like, these are not complicated things, but you have to look at all sides of it. Even if you don't like the snarky NASA believers, the totally programmed people being right, sometimes they're right. And they might be right about condensation trails. But look, another thing too is I'm saying that these are useless fears. Like, it's useless if you're not going to investigate it, if you're not going to stop it. If you're not if I believed in it, I would sue the airlines, call the cops, call the FBI, get the National Guard involved, get the air defense involved, and I would be on every street corner saying, we're under chemical warfare attack, stay home. I would get my city into lockdown. Everybody here would be locked down until the planes stopped. That's what I would do if I believed that the planes were involved in dumping poisons on us. But I don't believe it. But you believe it, those of you who are believers out there, and what are you doing? Nothing. Take Greta's example. If she believes in climate change, then what would you expect her to do but warn everybody because the planet's going to be destroyed? Like, at least she's not a hypocrite. I would like to see some more chemtrail Gretas taking activism. But then I wonder, whenever they do have these conspiracy theory conferences, why do the chemtrail believers fly on airplanes? Like, that's pretty bad. You're going to get on an airplane to go to a conference somewhere knowing that you're dumping poisons on babies and children and animals below. 737 says they don't have to spray poison. Look, some say it's bug spray, but then some will say, okay, that's absurd, so I'm going to be a little more conservative. So the conservative chemtrails say, oh no, it's just geoengineering. But I'm like, these are the same people who would say that climate change is a hoax. But then they say, no, climate change is a hoax, but geoengineering is real. And they're using climate change as an excuse for what they're doing with the planes. So now what's happened is they have been shoehorned into being climate change believers with a different rationale. That's a step back. That's a step deeper into the nightmare. Now you've become a default believer in climate change. And then they've met you full circle because now NASA has studies out and they're saying, hey, these condensation trails that we're causing with our planes, yeah, that's contributing to global warming. Now you're on the same sheet as NASA looking at the same problem, global warming, geoengineering. Climate change is actually caused by airplanes. I mean, this is how they got a lot of right-wing and conservative people into the space communism as an ideal. This is how they got a lot of them to become somewhat concerned with capitalism's effect on the environment because of Ohio. Because the left wasn't blowing up about it, the right did. And then the left waited a week, then they came out and they said, oh no, this happens all the time. It's a problem. Linda Curtis correctly says, you have to prove chemtrails to exist to label it a chemtrail. Exactly. Before you can ask me to debunk your theory, you have to bunk it. And I should probably put a note on this. Order of bunking. And this is for autohoaxology. I'll put an article up about it because this is a key point. And this is Hitchens' razor at work. Someone might have a conspiracy theory about something and you might say that's hogwash. And if they say, well, then explain this and this, you can assess it for yourself. But the question of it is, the question that I'm positing here is, has the thing been established to exist as they define it? Like, does it have to be debunked? Like, someone will say, oh, I have a Mandela effect. I used to remember a hyphen in the Kit Kat logo. I come from a parallel universe. And I'm like, that's bullshit. I don't believe in the Mandela effect. And they could say, well, what about Egg McMahon passing out money? And it's like, I don't remember that. What about Timmy in the well? And the thing is, they'll keep rattling them off. But the fact of it is, it hasn't been established to exist. The Mandela effect is not a fact. It hasn't been established as such. Therefore, I'm not required to debunk it. It still has to be bunked. Until then, it's just a belief. It's just a conclusion, an erroneous conclusion, demonstrably false and debunkable. 737 says, Mandela paid my bills, then I'll believe. Like if I started espousing Mandela belief, yeah, I might actually accrue a large following. But, my take on the Mandela effect is it's a perfect example of groupthink. And groupthink is one of these things that we're supposed to be against. And it's easy to recognize groupthink on the big platforms. But then you have these smaller little groups of people who have fringier ideas. And you think that they're individualistic and they've broken free of groupthink and the hive minds, but they join smaller hive minds. And I think it's fascinating to observe how people come to believe things. And I think that it's because we're not taught how to debunk for a reason. They don't want us to know how to cleanse our filters. They don't want us to know how to tell real from fake or truth from lie. They don't want us to have the cognitive tools to do so. And that's why I think it's important that we approach media deconstruction in a rational way that has a system, a methodology, and a purpose beyond getting someone to vote a certain way. There's no religious agenda here. What I'm looking at here is just being objective and widening our perspective, which is what we do. That's exactly what we're doing here. There's a level of a situational awareness that I think it's rational to have in a world where 95% of the people do respond like they're hive-minded, and we have to do what they say. We have to accept whatever they vote for, and we have to go along with whatever they believe in. Aliens probably next. I mean, who knows? The next thing could be this fungus thing seems to be picking up. There's some kind of flesh-eating zombie virus, or no, fungus. Some kind of fungus that wakes up in this show called The Last of Us, which I haven't seen yet. But I saw the premise of it, and I figured it would come true, and it has. And you'll see reports about some flesh-eating zombie fungus that's showing up around the world because of global warming. Okay, now a couple of things here about assumptions. Because we all know how the mainstream mediated mind works as far as how they consume media. They assume it's true unless it's countered by facts later. For example, your mainstream media believers all thought Jussie Smollett got lynched by MAGAs. But that didn't happen. But they believed it for the first 24 hours until it was debunked. And when it was debunked, it was treated like a scandal for them. It was for their benefit. So they can continue being believers, knowing if anybody ever tries to trick the MSM, they will be exposed. The MSM mainstream mediated mind has instant belief, no need for verification, no need for reality testing. They believe it as it's reported, and they get their updates real time. They come to a conclusion that fast. And that's one of the issues I have. I don't think you ought to believe when it's reported. Like 10 p.m. news, I'm going to believe whatever they say, and by 11, I will be apprised of these new facts. No, I think you should have a few days to cogitate, to think, to fact check, to debate. But this is why they inundate us with news. They want you to arrive at conclusions very fast without critically thinking. They don't want you to rely on a filter or think that you should be able to use one. And when I say filter, I mean a BS detector. Now, the mainstream media mind, they hold a wrong presupposition about the screen. They think it's a window to the world. And they will always be lying along to get along, whether they know it or not. And they will never arrive at the truth in this manner. And it's kind of cold to say, they're never going to find the truth, but you can point to people in various cults and you can pretty much realize that, okay, they're wasting their time. Maybe they're happy, maybe they're not. I'm not judging, but I'm saying they're not going to arrive at the truth. You can't tell me Scientology is the truth. You can't tell me this fill-in-the-blank religion is the truth. When you get into denominations and cults, they tend to think that they're truer than everybody. But that's not the case. Last night I listened to a live stream by Ronnie and Jason from Awake Souls. And they were basically roasting Bob post-mortem. Quite literally, they had a thumbnail of Bob's face, and it's like, where's Bob? And they had fire beneath him, implying he's in the lake of fire. Why? Because he didn't subscribe to their channel. Because they think that they are the two witnesses from the book of Revelations. Like they were basically put in the Bible by God, and we have to listen to them, or we're all going to go to where. My point of it is, those two and their believers who literally think that these two are from the Bible, they will never arrive at truth if they're stuck in their own little worlds. Truth is not that subjective. And they want us to treat it like such. Like, you can't criticize other people's beliefs. Well, no, but I can describe them accurately, right? Now, next you have the truthers, the conspiracy theorists, and these are the ones that are more like followers of or believers in InfoWars, David Icke, the ones that are still more or less convinced that the world stage's happenings are real and we can vote away the bad guys. Not the ones that are full-blown, past the world stage. But these are the ones who assume that the news that's being reported is an event that happened, but that we're not being told the whole story. So they're not like it's fake. They're like, no, it's real, but they're lying about it. There's more to the story. So their supposition is still wrong because they think that the window to the world is partially covered up and they need to uncover it. But again, it's not a window that you uncover it more from. What I've been saying is it's a filter. But the conspiracy theorists, the truthers that buy into the mainstream friendly conspiracy theories, and I would say chemtrails is mainstream friendly. Why do you think NASA has now said condensation trails cause climate change? It perfectly comports with the anti-NASA, anti-climate change beliefs on geoengineering connected to planes. It's like one big happy family now. But these additional layers of narrative that they add to fill in the blanks that they think are left by the media, add fear, add threats, add insecurity. That's why I'm saying that the average person is asleep. They're in a dream world. The conspiracy theorist who knows something's wrong but can't figure it out, they're in a nightmare. And the nightmare is where they'll happily put you if you're not content in the dream. What they don't want is for you to wake up. And that's where we are. And what I'm suggesting is that those of us who recognize what the media is and subtract from it what cannot be verified, we are holding a presupposition that it's not a window to the world, but it's a highly selective filter. And the difference between the ones in the dream world and the ones in the nightmare who will always be chasing their own tail, who will always be running in circles, the difference between them and this perspective is that we will eventually arrive at the truth, or at the absolute limit of what can be ascertained before we have to get some kind of inside info. We will arrive because we're on the right trajectory. We are looking at the news properly with the right set of filters, with the right presuppositions. We know it engages in war. That alone is a major game changer. Anyway, I was putting those down on my blog. Those are just my notes for this next installment on Autohoaxology 101. And it's really just about why we need to focus on filling in the dark spaces and not being afraid of being proven wrong. Because when I looked at the chemtrails, yeah, I thought there was something to it. I thought, well, maybe they're covering up some celestial things. Maybe there's something. There's all kinds of explanations. But then I thought, I can't argue from ignorance. I can't argue a point if I don't know the counter argument. And when I examined the counter argument and I talked to a pilot and I looked at these snowmaking fans on top of the mountain at 11,000 feet, I was just doing a bit of research on my own. And I realized, okay, it's probably more likely, given that there is no cohesive chemtrail theory anyway, it's mostly superstition, that it's a right-wing counterpart to climate change, and there's nothing to fear, and that there are other explanations that can suffice and that probably should be investigated by anybody saying that they're not sufficing. Exotic Matter says, if Detroit is the global center, they will need infrastructure for the entire world, at least we know. Yeah, I'm not too familiar with what they're doing in Detroit, but I have been hearing a lot about these cities, like 15-minute cities and stuff. And look, this is all preparing you for this idea that for man to live in harmony with Gaia, we're going to have to stop walking all over her surface. We're going to have to concentrate the populations into these closed systems. Like, the space age is not about sending us to other worlds. They're going to give us your space age gulags here on Earth. That's the objective here. And this is why I say it's such a stalking horse. The whole space program is such a stalking horse. Like, you have the people who believe in freedom, capitalism, and progress coming through not government, but through free enterprise. And they think that space and space utopianism is a byproduct of us, man, being liberated from government restraint and regulation. And the thing is, the ones who believe in this outer space program, who are on the right, who are capitalists, who aren't commies, they know environmentalism is a ploy to attack the free market. But the thing is, you cannot separate environmentalism from the space program. They have the same objectives, but they can convince you that living like this is the ideal. And once they get you to accept the ideal, they're going to make Earth Mars. And they already have. If you look at every single plan to go to Mars, it involves a Mars preparation city. And I was thinking, how easy would that be for them to affect a change? A switch of planets without sending you anywhere. Whether it's Hyperloop in a little theater or a situation where a lot of people are raised separate from society, not knowing that they're not actually on Mars, it's not far-fetched. I would refer to the movie The Village, where a group of people decide the world's terrible, it's a violent place, let's raise our kids in a perfect environment. And they agree to lie to their children for their own good. And this is classic utopianism. Their children grow up in the middle of a forest, not knowing that there's anything beyond. And they're programmed with fears, and they do drills where they're hiding in the basements while the parents run around, kicking the doors, making monster noises, dressed up like monsters. They program them with fear of monsters so they never leave this little fake world, but they were happy. Well, most of them were happy. And this is kind of interesting too, is the ones who saw through it just were not conformists. One of them was a deep thinker, kind of depressive. The other one was the village idiot, and he thought that the monsters were funny. And the other one was visually impaired and was not susceptible to the mind control, which is all given through your eyes. A lot of it is through your visual. I mean, they are pretty much it's such a visual system here. Everything that they see, everything that you see is going to play a role later in the bigger Psywar. And this is how I was able to say in 2021 that we're being prepared for space junk just based on movies like Moonfall or Don't Look Up or any number of shows on Netflix where we're constantly seeing images of things falling from the sky. Another very common theme I'm noticing is space arcs, which are just bunkers, which kind of got me thinking about, bunkers and closed systems and arcs, which seems to be a reoccurring theme. I mentioned Scientology. They have a underground bunker in New Mexico where they have a plan. And I talk about this occasionally because I think it's a perfect example of how the cult that runs the world thinks, how they aggregate control, how they create hive minds. Scientology is a perfect study. They have this concept that the world is in the grip of a terrible pandemic. Only it's a pandemic of engrams, not viruses. These are mind viruses. And until these are cleared, the world will not be clear. We have to get rid of all of them. And this involves mostly quarantining yourself from people who are carriers of these as you purge them through counseling sessions. And when you are clear of the so-called engrams and you're around other people who are clear of them, you're in a more or less quarantine environment. Now everybody outside is a threat. And if somebody who's not clear, a suppressive person, gets near you or someone else, it lowers you a little, and then you carry it to everyone else. And this mentality makes the cult paranoid of outsiders. It becomes us versus them, and it gives the cult control over who you associate with and what media you take in, because you might inadvertently infect them. And then once you figure out that this is the important thing, we need to clear the world, then you go out trying to mind vax people. And that's where you are bringing people into the cult. And it's a template for control. And the engram is no different than a virus, is no different than sin, and how religions are always there to eliminate sin. But their stated objective is to clear the world, get rid of criminality, cure global warming. And they have their bunker, which has all of their teachings carved into titanium plates, so that when there's a flood, a few people can rediscover Scientology and start the world fresh. A great reset type event, but without any of the engrams. I mean, it's a neat idea, I think, but it's science fiction. And I mean, it's obviously science fiction. I say the same about NASA and deep space. It's a neat idea, but it's science fiction. Joined by we, thank you for joining. It is 7/11 on 4/15/2023, the 111th anniversary of the sinking of the Titanic. Again, just a recap. In the movie The Titanic, 1997, the Titanic splits in two, creating two towers. One sinks, then the other. They have jumpers off the top. This is before 9/11. The director on 9/11 is at the wreckage of the actual Titanic. He's filming something called Ghosts of the Abyss. The Abyss is something referenced in Revelation 9/11 about the angel of the bottomless pit, or Apollyon, the destroyer. And he was in a vessel. James Cameron was in a vessel called the Deep Sea Challenger. So what I've been correlating is the Deep Sea Challenger with the Beast of the Abyss, because the abyss and the sea are the same thing. And 9/11, of course, another association with that. And then, of course, you have the sinking of the towers, the sinking of the Titanic. This stuff is all very well correlated, but I think it has to do with this Kraken symbol that's been popping up, this Kraken character, this motif, and it has to do with this idea that at some point, something's going to happen and Gaia is going to hit back from the bottom of the ocean or something. And a lot of the predictive programming is in Cameron's work. Has the nuke involved. I mean, he's the Terminator 2 guy. But again, that's why I think this Titanic thing is interesting for that reason. But then two, in recent years, we've had movies like Don't Look Up, which was about the Earth as like more or less the Titanic again, because we're about to hit a comet. It's not an iceberg, but it's a comet. And it's a theme they recreated because they used Leonardo DiCaprio as the face of Don't Look Up. He's the face of the Titanic. They use their actors to convey these messages. And the message was pretty well understood, I think, by all the reviews. Don't Look Up was basically saying, if we don't trust the scientists, we're all going to die. If we put greed, capitalistic greed, and let the richest men in the world steer the ship of state, steer the space age, we're all going to die. And that's what the film is suggesting, that we need to let the scientists take over. And the scientists in the movie, whether it's Moonfall or Don't Look Up, the scientists all have anxiety because they know the sky is about to fall. They're completely different from in character from the CEOs, who are only looking with dollar signs in their eyes up at the stars. And then Don't Look Up has a secondary meaning. Don't look up information that might make you a non-believer in what the scientists are saying, because it was disbelief that caused the world to be destroyed. By the way, that movie had some kind of prediction, I think. 6 months, 14 days. That's how long it was before the comet hit the Earth. 6/14 is Donald Trump's birthday. And I remember thinking about this, because at the same time that that movie was coming out, you had the Rust shooting that just took place. And this is when Alec Baldwin shot that director and the film producer, was it Helena Hutchins? But the director, Joel Souza, has Donald Trump's birthday. And I remember thinking, he shoots a guy who has Trump's birthday, and this is Alec Baldwin, the most Trump deranged person in the world, used to dress up like Trump for SNL. And he said, portraying Donald Trump made me wish for a meteor to hit the White House. And I thought that was kind of an interesting thing to bring up. A meteor to hit Donald Trump, basically. And he shoots a guy with Trump's birthday. Then a movie comes out about a meteor about to hit the Earth on 6/14. Just kind of, and then you could even kind of add a little more to that, because Rust, the Rust movie set where Alec Baldwin was, had some fascinating connections to The Hunt for Red October, which a movie he was in, and so was the victim of his shooting. She wasn't in the movie, but she's from the place where the movie takes place. And Hunt for Red October is about a submarine, a nuclear submarine. Again, the theme I'm bringing up here is something from the ocean, the Apollyon, the destroyer from the abyss. And that's what happens in Terminator 2 when the nuke blows up Seattle. But reoccurring themes here, again, is just kind of the Rust movie set brings in a Tom Clancy. Sum of All Fears, Tom Clancy, Hunt for Red October, The Division. We're living in a few Tom Clancy novels. Like 9/11. I mean, this is one of my favorite stories, about Tom Clancy's involvement in world stage psychodrama. Here you have Sum of All Fears being read as an audiobook on the space station when 9/11 happens. And the American on board, the only astronaut on board, said, this is what's happening on the ground. It's just like what's in the audiobook. Another one of these eerie coincidences where he's watching 9/11 from space while listening to a Tom Clancy. I mean, it's absurd. But again, Tom Clancy, The Division, is one about money on a Black Friday, spreading a virus, precipitating the downfall of America. And now we're seeing the banks collapse, and it's contagious. It's a contagion. One bank infects another. They're using the same type of symbolism here. It's like a viral banking thing, virus on the cash. You see, so we're still in these same stories. Linda Curtis says Challenger explosion also. Oh yes, the Deep Sea Challenger was the name of the vessel he took to the Titanic. And I was thinking maybe it symbolizes something here, like the Challenger taking down the Titanic. The Titanic being perhaps a symbol of the Tower of Babel. Again, too big to fail, a monument of man's hubris, going from earth to the heaven, like Nimrod. And this all actually does make sense. Because, well, for one, the Challenger blows up at 73 seconds or 1 minute, 13 seconds. And these numbers tell a whole other story. But I do think there's something to it, because it's the Challenger explosion that conveys part of their bigger story. And this was actually meta-scripting that was discerned by William Cooper, who said, if you look at the names of the shuttles, it gives you a story. A Columbian endeavor to discover Atlantis, and all Challengers will be destroyed. Kind of a fascinating little tie-in there. But the 73 seconds or 113 has a number of other connections that we could go into, but the main one is 113. is the date, November the 3rd, 113, or 311. This number has been correlated in predictive programming with some destruction centering on Seattle for such a long time, the Space Needle in particular. And the Space Needle is just a symbol. And I think it symbolizes the Tower of Babel, and we're being prepared for the Tower of Babel to fall. And the One World Tower that replaced the twins opened on 113. That's why I think this is getting very interesting and significant. Like, the other day, Joe Biden rang a bell. It's called I think it was called, was it called the Phoenix Bell? No, he was in Phoenix ringing the peace bell. And someone had pointed out the symbolism in the bell and the bell tower, that it's the shaft of Bell, the obelisk. And I'm like, yeah, that's perfectly right there. The Space Needle and the rocket and the obelisk, these are all analogous symbols. That's why when you see the Space Needle being taken down by the Kraken, like if you look at the Seattle Kraken's logo and their imagery, yeah, I think it's symbolic of this coming event. I don't think it's a coincidence that Jeff Bezos' yacht is devoured by a Kraken on 1/6, season 1, episode 6 of Inside Job. Inside Job, 9/11 reference. 1/6 was the date that they were going to release the Kraken, and that was the Capitol thing. But in the Inside Job TV show, season 1, episode 6, Jeff Bezos on his yacht is pulled underwater. Now the yacht, his mega yacht, is a symbol that represents the Titanic. And here's why I say it's compatible as a symbol to the Tower of Babel. And again, Bezos is Nimrod. He is the builder of the Tower of Babel. Look at his headquarters in Virginia that they're building. And it's built into his overall persona. But what Nimrod does by building his tower and making his incursion into the heavens is he's basically giving a middle finger to God. He's saying, I don't care about your will. I'm going to demonstrate my greatness, go against your will, and unify everybody and make everybody shop at Amazon. And that's what he does. And then everything gets scattered. Well, when Bezos was standing on his mega yacht, well, what is it telling you? He's the guy, more than anybody, who should know about global warming. Let's just pretend it's real for a minute. If the globe is getting warmer because of capitalism, the richest man in the world has made the most money off capitalism. All the Amazon packages, all the deliveries, the carbon footprint of that man alone, it's like his fault the world's gonna burn up. And yet he buys a mega yacht and he flaunts his wealth, walks around, struts around while his inferiors are still in masks, his servants. And I'm saying that is the richest man in the world saying, I don't care global warming. I don't care about my carbon footprint. I'm going to do what I want to do. And if you think about it, that's Nimrod. It's exactly the same notion. One is flaunting God, the other is flaunting globe's wrath. And that's why shortly after, in the Inside Job, he gets pulled underwater. It's all symbolic. The dollar bill, the pyramid on the back, that's the eye of Nimrod, if you ask me. I've been really thinking about this. The all-seeing eye on your money, the mono eye on the money. And if you look, look, this is a fascinating thing, this topic of this, how they merge these biblical characters and graft them onto world stage people. But I think what is coming out of this thing with the Titanic and this Kraken is that there's this expected fall. And another big clue came in the summer of 2021, when on the anniversary of man's walk on the moon, Bezos went to space, which means what? His tower uniting earth to heaven, his Tower of Babel reached the heavens. That's why I say the space needle is another analogous symbol here, because space is the new heaven. Well, Bezos took himself to space on 7/20/2021, and he launched at 9:11 a.m. And I thought, why would he launch at 9:11 a.m.? Again, 9/11, Inside Job, the Kraken taking down the Tower of Babel or the Titanic or the mega yacht of Nimrod. He launched at 9/11 to symbolize something here. And it has to do with this story of the Titanic sinking, the Titanic being the West. It's a meta-scripted story. And the fact they launched 9/11 on the anniversary of Apollo 11. Apollo Apollyon. Walking on the moon is the incursion that triggers the reaction. And I think that the date symbolizes that Nimrod himself has completed this work. And that's kind of where, if you look at the big picture, and I talk about the monolithic control over media, they've created a one world religion. They've already unified all the nations. They've already got everyone believing in a new concept of sin, and that's your global warming, your carbon footprint, the wrath of God, global warming. They've pretty much made it impossible not to be a believer in these things, but this is the unifying religion. They've built it, and the next thing for it to do is to fall. And one more point on Nimrod. He was one of the builders of one of the first civilizations after the flood, which signifies to me that the flood is yet to come. Now, again, what is the flood? Is it water, or is it symbolic? Is it information? Not quite sure. But the age of Aquarius is the water bearer, this deluge. And I think it might be information. It doesn't have to be a literal flood. Okay, well, this has been great. I'm going through your comments. It is 4/15/2023. Wanted to just kind of catch up on this Titanic thing just because it's the anniversary. And that event, that fictional event, whatever you want to call it, and it has all the hallmarks of being a hoax, by the way, predictive programming and everything. But it definitely contains all of the elements of a psychological operation. And it's as a symbol, though, it really stands out as being relevant right now. Just like train crashes have been used as a metaphor for everything wrong with our political and economic system. That's why they had the major train derailment in Ohio. Ohio is the heart of it all. They wanted to depict America having a heart attack, and the railways are the clogged arteries because our system is unsustainable. All right, here's an article from USA Today. The Titanic sank into the Atlantic 111 years ago today. 3 wild new conspiracy theories. I'd almost guarantee that none of these conspiracy theories will include that it didn't happen. All right, Don't Look Up, if you didn't see it yet, came out in 2021. It's actually a comedy disaster, and it's about 2 astronomers going on a media tour to warn mankind of an approaching comet, which is basically a space iceberg. And, it is kind of funny. I don't think I disliked it. It actually has a pretty decent ending. But one of the things I noticed was the scientist portrayed by Leonardo DiCaprio was so ridden with anxiety, he had to take pills. He was agoraphobic. And you notice, since that movie's coming out, how many ways they've given us to be agoraphobic. Agoraphobic for any number of things. Whatever it is that gets you to lock down, to be afraid of open spaces. And then the movie Moonfall, that came out around the same time, had the same situation, where the savior of the film, the one who saves the world, is a guy who has to take pills for anxiety. Like, what are the odds? Hillman Avenger says, whenever I see a representation of an eagle, I now substitute a phoenix. There's so much symbolism all over. Yeah, we ought to spend a night just analyzing the different phoenix symbols, like the bat. Christopher Nolan, who's the Kubrick of our time, of today, of this generation, Christopher Nolan is the one who brought out the burning bat with the Batman movies. And then if you think about it, what was the phoenix symbol, the reset symbol of 2020? It was the bat. The bat was the catalyst. You have Hunger Games. It has the mockingjay that holds the arrow, same symbol as the phoenix with the the dove with the olive branch. The dove with the olive branch follows the flood. And the flood is like, in a way, it's sort of like the phoenix's fire. It's about everything being destroyed, and then you rebuild. Then you have the Crow movies with Brandon Lee, who fake died on 3/31. That was his death anniversary. The Crow movie, death, resurrection. The guy makes a number of jokes, and a number of Jesus jokes, in fact. But the crow is used in that movie as a symbol of death and resurrection. Then they had the movie Songbird about 2023. It was about COVID 23. It was like I didn't even watch it, but I was just noticing the symbol and the bird. It's a reset symbol, is what I'm saying. But the eagle is often used as well. I mean, this was why when Lady Gaga sang the national anthem, she was wearing a dove on her shirt with the olive branch, but she was dressed like Hunger Games, which uses a mockingjay with the arrow. These are analogous symbols, and it was communicating the message that it's the reset message. And it's the Hunger Games that depicts a post-reset world. Exotic Matter says January and February are fake months. I haven't heard that, but it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, look, a lot of the myths that we look at, various death and rebirth, these dying saviors that come back, it's like a lot of it seems kind of redundant, but a lot of them are different versions of the same thing. But depending on where you are in the world, they have slightly different forms. It's kind of interesting how interchangeable it all is, though, at the end of it, which makes me think there's a common source. The more I look at the occult underpinnings of a lot of these rituals they do, the more clear it is that certain archetypes are simply interchangeable, which makes it easy to create a cipher. So you think you're watching the Super Bowl and you're watching a pregnant singer performing a dance to entertain the world. It's just art. No, actually, you're looking at an avatar, an incarnation of Inanna, of Isis, of Babylon, and it's consciously designed to be this. It is the drawing down the moon. You are looking at a living idol in a fertility rite that's been practiced since whatever you want to call Mystery Babylon, but it's a occulted ritual, and the public won't know what it means if they're not initiates. She's dressed in red with her baby bump showing, and all the male dancers around her. At first I thought they were in PPE, but they're all in white. And what is the meaning of that? Well, she represents what's in the chalice. They're the bread, the bread and the chalice. This is communion. It's actually the Gnostic Catholic Mass. And I don't want to get into the specifics about what this represents, but it's a fertility rite. And the Super Bowl represented a chalice. The chalice is the heart. And if these are, again, interchangeable things, your deck of playing cards has your 4 elements they use in witchcraft: fire, water, earth, air. And they have it as the pentacle is the diamond, is earth. The staff is the staves, is fire. The sword is air, or the spades. And the cup is heart or water. It's like everyone's messing with witchcraft and they don't even know it because the symbols have been sublimated. But what gives that one away, and again, the heart was a reoccurring symbol here. The Grammy Awards that had just occurred had Heart Part 5 by Kendrick Lamar given a Grammy. And he's the one who performed where all his dancers were in red and he was in white. Now again, she was in red, they were in white. His was vice versa. And he had the crown of thorns. So he's playing the role of the sun god in white. They are the goddess in red. And it's the same rite. The heart being the connection, because the heart is the womb. And what we were looking at there was a conception rite. Going through your comments. Hillman Avenger says, December is DEC, which is 10, not 12. October is 8, not 10. Right, so 9/11, Sept is actually 7/11. So 7/11 was an inside job, after all. Yeah, I've noticed this. And I think it's important to notice these things because, like I said, they can refer to dates and have 2 different meanings. Or they might, like JL26 has done a lot on this. And you can't dismiss this. JP Morgan, who says that government and corporations need to use eminent domain to start seizing private property to save the planet. Yeah, that JP Morgan, they're all about this astrology. They say millionaires don't practice astrology, billionaires do. And it's not just like practicing astrology, like doing tarot cards or divinating with someone in a occult bookstore. We're talking about a more detailed understanding and system of planning based on this detailed understanding. The Great Reset itself was a conspiracy theory until 12/21/20, when Jupiter and Saturn had a great conjunction on a winter solstice. And the winter solstice great conjunction is the Christmas star, which we haven't had for 2,000 years, which was our 0 year. So we kind of had a reset. But you can see it's all based in the stars. And again, the Super Bowl ritual, yeah, they always occur near Imbolc, Candlemas. It's a very specifically timed rite, which would use a green field and all the symbols it does, because it's representing the weaning of the sun god. That's kind of their timing on this thing. It coordinates with it. And that was pretty clear with Janet Jackson and Justin Timberlake when she has the, quote, wardrobe malfunction. No, they needed a bare-breasted representative of Bridget with a solar symbol on her breast with the green field and a sun god representative, the golden-haired Justin Timberlake, to perform this ritual. Or in 2013, Super Bowl 47, you had Beyonce there performing, and they had 33 minutes of darkness, where they probably had a pizza party beneath the bleachers. I don't know. But that was, again, another one of these rituals. And it's too much of a simplification to call it satanic. You know, I would say this. If you really want to look at what the elite believe at the top tier, their occult ritual, it's this new paradigm, this thelemic cult, Crowley. And what is it exactly? Well, it's an amalgamation of everything. And what they have done is they took America's counterpart to Aleister Crowley, Jack Parsons. He and sci-fi writer, creator of Scientology, L. Ron Hubbard, they together are the influences that created the NASA space religion. The NASA space religion is the thelemic mystery Babylon cult that everybody's worshiping at the Super Bowl. But it's disguised as science fiction and a trip to some distant paradise, when no, actually, it's just a replacement for heaven. They're not taking you anywhere. Like, you know, if you went to your church, has your church ever actually sent any of you guys to heaven? Like, has any religion fulfilled its promises with miracles? Not on this side of life. Well, it's the same with NASA. It's all a false promise, or a claim to know and a claim to be a guide. Like Musk is the way. Do you really think that if the world is going to be, let's say, invaded or flooded or destroyed in some way, that he's going to save your life? That you could buy a ticket from the richest men in the world and go into this heaven above? No, they're actually posers. They're posing as saviors for a reason, though. It's because they need to maintain this dependency. They need us to need them. It's codependency that they inflict on the masses, and then they have you situated around their various narcissistic control freaks and control systems. Oswaldo says, auto hoax is the way. Yes, I am the way. And it's I, like the self. I am the final arbiter of what I believe to be true. It's just, to me, it's about removing malware, removing false presuppositions, and being objective. And if you're objective, then you're able to admit when you're wrong. Like, here's what I want to know. Will Crow 77777 ever admit that the white vinegar probably has nothing to do with the chemtrails above his house? Will he ever be able to entertain the notion that he's wrong, or is he dead set? Like, I'm not dead set on anything but what I, as in new facts matter. You can't be like Neil deGrasse Tyson. Neil deGrasse Tyson says, if 97% of the scientists say it's a fact, it's a fact. Sorry, reality doesn't work that way. Well, sadly, it kind of does now. It's not supposed to. Reality isn't that way, but the world stage is that way. Meaning, if 97% of the people believe that we were just invaded by aliens, then, yep, we've all got to do our, whatever it is, alien sensitivity training. Whatever they're going to do, we'll have to go along with it if 97% want. Now, I haven't spent a lot of time on this topic, but I have been. I just haven't talked about it. But I'm monitoring it closely. And it has to do with the top of the conservatives. It's the strangest thing. You know, the behind the perv phenomenon, where you found out We found out there were some bad actors very popularly placed within the flat earth community that happened to have very disturbing things in their background. Then we found out that this was kind of commonplace. Well, it seems that the American conservative right is run by a black male ring. Milo Yiannopoulos should have been the first clue. But Ollie Alexander, organizer of Stop the Steal, the guy who looks sort of like Sammy Davis Jr., I've heard him called Sammy Davis Hitler, but he was one of the J6 organizers. And he's very well known. He was actually there on Alex Jones's show with Nick Fuentes and Ye. He was part of that entourage. Well, this little clique of mutual blackmailers have started like ratting on each other, and it's getting very ugly. But it's kind of illustrates how secret societies work. If you think about it, Ollie Alexander, Milo Yiannopoulos, MTG, Laura Loomer, all these shady characters, this menagerie of political creatures, all of them know about everybody else and how they're all groomers and predators and pretty disturbed individuals, all of them. Except for Nick Fuentes, who's pure as the wind-driven snow. He's a virgin, obviously, even though he's surrounded by a bunch of pederasts and pervs and groomers. My point of it is, they all know everybody's dirty secrets and nobody talks. Well, Milo got triggered by something, and he spilled the beans on Ollie. Ollie Alexander, friends of Roger Stone, Alex Jones. Ollie Alexander's friends with everybody on the conservative right. Tim Pool, all these right-wingers who've been leading the MAGA thing. My point of it is, he's exposed as a groomer. Meanwhile, they're all opposed to groomers. So I'm just like, okay, well, what's going to happen now? Is Alex Stein going to protest the next conservative action committee, the next CPAC, because they're groomers? Or are they going to turn a blind eye? Well, Nick Fuentes was forced to make a comment on this thing, and he said it was merely flirting. He said it was flirting for Ollie to target teenagers. Now, he gave it his tacit approval, and he let it go on, as in these e-celebrity politicos are using their status to invite people, younger people from all over, and get them into their sick club. The common denominator here is blackmail. And my point is, this is a perfect example of how a secret society would work. It's like an NDA, but everybody has screen caps. But we'll see what happens, in the coming days here. I'm very, very interested to see, because this is too close to the head of the snake, and it's too perfect of a thing that, and the thing is, I'm not seeing the media jumping on it like they normally would. So I'm kind of wondering, how far-reaching is the influence of this society of keeping secrets on one another? Really interesting stuff. All right, this has been great. It's, again, the anniversary of the sinking of the Titanic. We just passed another anniversary of the Hoaxathon, which might be worth revisiting. A few other things we may get into soon. I was looking into Ye's presidential run, but apparently he's ghosted Ollie. He's ghosted Fuentes. He's ghosted Milo. Like, that's kind of strange, too, if you think about it. Like, how many sickos should you have if you have 10 friends in the room? Out of your 10 friends, how many sickos? And I remember thinking this back at the Flat Earth Conference. I'm like, what are the odds that half of these speakers would be on parole for the worst things ever? Well, it's because it's contrived, and you're looking at control. But anyway, the Ye campaign seems to be on hold. He seems to have ghosted everyone, and I don't think he's paying anybody. Now, there's some interesting stuff about his school, the Donde Academy, that's come out. Like, for one, the students all the time, and they weren't allowed to learn about the Holocaust. So expect to learn more about Ye's cult coming soon. Joe Rogan sounds the alarm on AI with the deepfake podcast. Yeah, it was pure AI, and it looked and sounded like Joe Rogan, and it was just as good as one of his regular shows. Now, that doesn't really send an alarm bell for me about AI. It sends an alarm bell about Joe Rogan's content that it could so easily be replicated, because you could not recreate infinite plane radio with AI. We're too far beyond their scripted reality and their guardrails. But it shows you that he's basically just regurgitating Wikipedia level intel. One more point on Ollie Alexander. Apparently at a bar, he assaulted Owen Schroyer. He grabbed Owen Schroyer and was told that if he does it again, he would be killed. So this has been going on for a while, and you can see it's just so close to the head of the serpent there, so close to the tip of the spear. It's got to do some damage. So I just kind of wanted to set that up for whatever happens later. Kyle Rittenhouse is being sued by Gage Grossarm. Yeah, Gage, no, actually it's the other way around. Kyle Rittenhouse is suing Gage Grossarm for emotional distress. You know, the guy whose arm got all squibby? And look, I haven't seen Gage's arm since the day after it was shot and he smiled for the camera, but I'm pretty sure it was a split. Yeah, Rittenhouse is suing Grosskreutz and asking for money. I'm like, why does he need money? Oh yeah, Lynn Wood said, hey, Wendy Rittenhouse, keep your son in jail for the next 90 days because it's going to be an apocalypse after the election and he'll be safer there. So Wendy keeps him in jail. Meanwhile, Lynn Wood, still raising money off of Kyle Rittenhouse's predicament, raises $4 million and then disappears. And Kyle Rittenhouse's mom, I don't think she's ever been able to get the money back from Lynn Wood, who kind of disappeared with his MAGA money. I mean, he made off pretty well. Lynn Wood, I think his name was, he was the one who was with the Centennial Bomb thing. He also represented the Ramseys, John Benet Ramsey's parents. That was him. Anyway, so many fascinating characters on the political stage. It's a circus. All right, we'll be back. You can get the archives. You go to IPR. Actually, just go to ips.monster, go to infiniteplane.live, join the Patreon. I'll make sure you don't miss that, and I'll try to get all the links out tonight. Thanks for joining. Have a great